The events took place in a world full of secrets and unexplored corners, which seemed like a real paradise. The main character began to come to his senses, realizing that he had recently been in the abyss of unconsciousness, and began to look around. Looking at himself, the guy suddenly realized that he was in this unknown place without clothes, which greatly embarrassed him. Raising his head, the boy saw a stranger approaching him, which scared him a lot. In front of him stood a strange subject, resembling some kind of deity with wings behind his back. Coming closer, the mysterious man noticed that the guy looked pretty good. This reaction of the stranger made the guy very wary, and he wanted to figure out who this person was and where he was. A few hours ago, the main character was still sleeping at home and could not understand how he ended up here. The mysterious man chuckled and said that the boy was blessed. The stranger soon moved away, and the alarmed hero tried to hold him back in order to find out what was happening. Suddenly, someone called out that they had found a stove for Lin Huan and that she needed to rest. The old man did not want to disturb her. The angry boy couldn't understand why he was called a stove. It was something unpleasant. A mysterious girl appeared and approached the guy. The girl blushed when she found herself next to the guy, and he didn't know how to react to this. Realizing that her name was Lin Huan, the guy looked at the girl. Approaching the guy, Lin ordered him to lie down. She had plans. Something new had arisen, and the protagonist felt the pleasure of being in the presence of a real goddess. He wanted to stay on top despite her divine status. By grabbing the girl's hand, the guy became the initiator in this situation. Now the common man was above the real goddess and in control of the situation. 10 months after the protagonist found himself in the heavenly world, events continued to develop. Every time he woke up, it seemed to him that it was just a dream, but in fact it was reality. Suddenly, someone shouted that the elder had been asked to execute this furnace 10 times already. Because of this, no one could understand why the saint interrupted the elder every time to stop the furnace execution. The strangers believed that it was useless. Sooner or later, he would be destroyed along with his offspring. These words made the protagonist angry, and he did not understand why he was so despised. After thinking for a bit, he remembered that the vile creatures were his children. At that moment, the saint appeared and condemned the scoundrel for insulting him and their children. With a wide gesture, Lin Huan showed her disdain for the impudent people. It was a shock for an ordinary person to see his beloved goddess punishing the deities. For the girl, it was a precaution to protect her boyfriend and their offspring. Alarmed, the protagonist decided to lie down and rest, trying to forget about what happened. But as soon as he lay down, the goddess turned away from him, no longer wanting to deal with him. Noticing her reaction, the guy asked her to show them their children. Without hesitation, the goddess invited him to go with her. Feeling awkward, he covered himself with a towel and hurried after her. He was still worried about whether the baby was a boy or a girl, or maybe even twins. It turned out that the goddess really did give birth to 7 children at once, which amazed him. The girl looked at him in confusion, although she didn't understand why he was so embarrassed. Remembering that she was a goddess, he made a humorous remark to ease the tension. Their journey continued when the goddess opened a magical portal for them, allowing them to travel to their children. So, to complete what he had started, the ordinary man went to another place along with the deity. After teleporting to a new space, they discovered many different deities with wings. The stunned guy immediately wanted to know where they were, because he had never been here for so long before. While continuing to look around, he tried to find out from Lin Huan what kind of place this was. It turned out that this was the territory of the heavenly divine race in their heavenly kingdom. After this, the man guessed that his girlfriend was a deity of the heavenly divine race. And after thinking for a while, he also wanted to know if all the women of this race needed a furnace to practice. In fact, Lin Huan used the secret method of the 7 races called the Chaos Bloodline, and she only needed a furnace. Blushing, the hero asked if she had any other beautiful sisters who also needed a stove, because he was willing to help, but Lin Huan refused. She also didn't like the guy's behavior and threatened him with a blade, asking him to shut up. Their journey continued, as it was necessary to get to the children as quickly as possible. All the deities around turned their attention to the man who dared to invade their personal space. The worried celestials immediately began to discuss his impudent behavior. But the brave guy knew that their conversations were useless, and his wife was a deity, and he had nothing to fear. After some time, they reached the place where the children were. The lady handed him the rings to enter this space. Seeing the ring, the hero thought that it was a symbol of their love and accepted it with pleasure. The goddess could not understand his behavior, not knowing the customs of the human world. Now, they had to enter the building to see the children. As soon as they entered, they saw the first child lying on the bed. The first baby was named Abeo, and he was very handsome and looked very much like his father. There were many children in the other beds, all of them sleeping peacefully. Lin Huan explained that out of the 7 children, only Debao inherited the heavenly bloodline, divine races. Realizing this, the hero understood why the heavenly race had decided to condemn him and his 6 children. It was obvious, and Lin wanted to help them get out of here, ensuring their safety. Understanding the words of the goddess, the common man realized that it would be difficult. The spatial ring on his hand was not just a decoration. Now he needed to take the children. The goddess took action, using her magical weapons to protect the children and her husband. This weapon was called the Ice Cloud, and it was extremely powerful. As they exited the building, they were met by guards, armed and ready to kill if they had to. The goddess became angry and warned that anyone who tried to persecute her husband and children would be immediately killed. Having transformed, Lin Huan was ready to destroy any guard who threatened her children. Her words were accompanied by a powerful blow that stunned the guards. The power of the deity's magic was astounding, and Lin Huan was one of the strongest. The guard saw that the great saint became even stronger after the birth of the child. In defense of her husband, Lin Huan asked him to run to the altar she was going to hold off the guards. Without hesitation, the man started running to save his life and the lives of his children. However, he decided to stop, realizing that he couldn't just leave. Turning around, he addressed his wife, asking if they could meet again. It turned out that after Lin Huan ascended to the Lan divine realm, they would no longer be destined to meet in the human world. Worried to the limit, the man wondered about the fate of their children if the goddess could not protect them. In reality, to her, they were just a tool to unlock the potential of her bloodline, and she no longer wished to see them. These words shocked the hero, and how could the goddess say this with such cold-bloodedness? Overcome with anger, he wondered what it meant to be a goddess if she could do this. As he left the portal, he shouted that Lin Huan was unworthy of being the mother of his children. He didn't care who they were. He was going to train them and do everything he could to make them good people. After this, he intended to return here with his children and put an end to this divine kingdom. The goddess's reaction was immediate, and she was stunned to hear such words from a mortal. But Lin Huan still intended to continue to fight for her children and protect them. Events continued to unfold in Sinan village. A stranger came to the head of the village, interested in one of the residents. This stranger was a deity and was surprised that the village chief had not yet found the right person. The village head said that everything was calm in the village, but this did not satisfy the deity, who decided to return next year. The elder even asked to warn him about the visits of the deities in order to prepare food for them. The deity realized that he had not eaten human food for many years, and suddenly it smelled the aroma coming from the old roadside kitchen. There was already a line of people waiting for a hot pot at the cafe. Dish radiated beautiful aroma. The owner of the cafe was Lu Bingbing, a succubus who welcomes visitors. Following the scent, the deity headed to the cafe to find out what exactly smelled so wonderful. The stranger, surrounded by a crowd of people gathered in the cafe for a delicious meal, did not even have to suspect that he was not one of the ordinary customers. The deity's servant masterfully hid his wings so as not to attract attention. The excited crowd could be heard shouting for their food quickly, and no one could resist the aromas or wait in line for long. This cafe has always been popular for its divine tastes, and the aromas were so strong that one could judge the readiness of the dishes by them. The servant of God was amazed by this magnificent smell, but the owner of the cafe did not want to reveal the secrets of culinary art. Lu Bingbing insisted that no one ask unnecessary questions, but simply wait their turn. Under the spell, the divine being silently joined the queue. Some time later, the stranger came to his senses. He continued to watch Lu Bingbing, but was confused by his thoughts. In his eyes, she seemed like a little girl, and her succubus bloodline was pure. There were many races in this world, each with their own unique power. Suddenly, someone in the crowd noticed a mysterious guy with an unusual scroll in his hands. Opening the scroll, he saw a portrait of old Lu, the owner of the cafe. The deity realized that this man, who had an arrest warrant issued for him, had opened a cafe here. Realizing the contradictions, the messenger of God knew that he had to arrest the owner. But the aromas of the dishes affected him too strongly. While he was about to put the matter aside and eat, he intended to arrest the owner and return with him. Some time later, events continued to develop. The divine being was happy because his time had finally come. Lu Bingbing immediately announced that the establishment was now closed and no more orders could be placed. For a more convincing effect, the girl took out a whip and began to scare passersby. Everyone was extremely upset that they would no longer be able to enjoy this magnificent dish today. The deity couldn't resist and came closer to find out how delicious this hot pot was. He begged to be allowed to try at least a piece of this dish, but Lu Bingbing remained adamant, saying that the establishment was already closed. Continuing to insist, the deity reported that he had not eaten for 3 whole days. Soon the stranger began shouting that he was a fan and admirer of Lu Yuntina. That's why he begged to be given the opportunity to have a snack. Hearing the stranger begging them, they nevertheless invited him to the cafe. The visitor immediately rushed to the table to sit down and try the aromatic dishes. One of the waiters approached the guest and handed him the menu for review. The deity immediately noticed that this boy had an incredibly pure bloodline of the heavenly divine race. That boy was Shiao Chong, the messenger of the heavenly divine race, and the deity immediately realized that this was the son of the saint, and it was surprised that he worked as a waiter. Coming to his senses, the man banged his fist on the table in delight. And yet, after thinking a little, he ordered absolutely everything on the menu. The friendly waiter happily took his order. Meanwhile, preparations continued in the kitchen. One of the children knew how to control fire and help his father cook. The hot pot was ready in no time, thanks to the child who could heat up the pan in seconds. The caring father praised his son for his efforts, but for the boy this was something ordinary, since he used only a small part of his abilities. The son asked his father to go play with his older brother, and Lu Yuntin happily let him go. Coming to his older brother, the younger son invited him to play together. Shiao Chong invited the boy to go, and he himself intended to join later after he paid the bill for the meal. Watching what was happening, the deity made conclusions, since this guy was from the line of fire sorcerers, and this was inexplicable. The guest was perplexed, not understanding how an ordinary person could give birth to such monsters. At this time, the youngest son noticed that the guest had very long hair, and he decided to set it on fire. But the deity didn't care, because he was too absorbed in the taste of the food to notice. The food was truly divine, worthy of a royal banquet. The combination of ingredients was unique and at the same time exquisite, giving the dishes an unusual taste. After a few minutes, all the dishes were eaten and the meal was wonderful. The good-natured owner of the establishment approached the guest, offered him a watermelon, and asked him to eat well and come back next time. This behavior surprised the deity even more. It clearly did not expect this. The service in the restaurant was excellent, which impressed the guest. In fact, watermelon was given to everyone who ordered hot pot. It was their tradition. Seeing the scroll, the man thought that the guest was his admirer. It was surprising that the stranger had a poster with Lu's face on it. Juntina. One of the children decided to check if this man was a fan of his father. But as soon as he picked up the poster, he saw that it was an arrest order issued by the heavenly race. The worried youth shouted to his father about the arrest order issued by the heavenly race. The guest turned out to be a soldier of the heavenly race who had come for their father. Angry, Lu Yuntin grabbed a knife and told the children that the heavenly race had come for their father. Xiaolan arrived on the scene to help her father in a difficult situation because she was an elf. Lu Bingbing also arrived at the scene, not wanting anything to happen to her father and not intending to let him get arrested. The fifth child, Lu Qin, also came to the rescue, as he was a representative of the ancient vanguard race. The sixth child, Shiao Chong, and the seventh child, Shiao the Yi, were happy to join the family to help, as they came from the Asura and Shaman races. So the whole family gathered to protect their father from the heavenly soldiers who came for him. This turn of events really surprised the deity, because it did not understand how this was possible and why there were so many different monsters in this family. The red-haired guy with angular features had strong muscles and great explosive power. Elves who inherited their bloodline had super perception and the ability to manipulate the environment. Xiaolan began to fight, dealing devastating blows to scare away the deity. This blow was dangerous for the guest, since one such move could seriously damage the celestial being. The worried villain declared that their entire family consisted of monsters. A representative of the heavenly race also took part in the battle, ready to defend his father. This greatly surprised the villain, as the young man had already shown his eye of justice at such a young age. Shiao Chong attacked from afar without resorting to physical force. His crushing blow materialized mentally. If this were to be told to the elder, it would cause shock to the entire heavenly race, and the deity was aware of this. The impudent man offered to go with him in order to spare the others. The enraged children refused to listen to him and demanded that their mother be returned. Then came another powerful blow, which completely broke the villain. The impudent man, continuing to resist, watched the children who were preparing to attack him again. Fire magic was used on the uninvited guest, striking in its strength and power, especially considering that these abilities were manifested in ordinary children. The other magical abilities of the younger children were also impressive and caused tremors to run through the scoundrel's body. Each of the children loved their father very much and was ready to do anything to protect him. Initially, this was not particularly impressive to the deity, as the children were too young to use their gifts that effectively, and their speed was not sufficient to surpass him. The scoundrel believed that in 10 years they could be more dangerous. Suddenly, the impudent man saw something very unusual, which greatly alarmed him. The experience of fear made him scream, claiming that no ordinary person could do such a thing. Lu Yuntin used his heavenly race's eye of judgment to destroy his enemy. The attack followed immediately, and the protagonist slew the impudent deity. The children also did their best to help their father and dealt devastating blows. Many different attacks were used in an attempt to destroy the impudent deity. The impressive power of each of the magical abilities was used in this battle. After a short time, the impudent fellow found himself in a trap and needed to be finished off. The super powerful representative of the ancient race was about to do so and was gaining momentum, preparing to strike. The force of this blow sent the impudent fellow flying several dozen meters away. One of the strongest sons also attacked, using all his strength and muscle to hit the deity right in the face. Despite the severe pain, the impudent man continued to resist, not wanting to admit defeat. But the children were so strong that they exhausted him, and he could no longer fight, and the protagonist dealt the final and decisive blow. After a powerful blow, the fight quickly ended and the deity fell to the floor, no longer moving. One of the children thought this was not enough and decided to break the egg right into his opponent's face. One of the daughters threw a large round egg at him, aiming straight at the impudent fellow's face. Thus, the deity who dared to appear in the world of people was defeated. The little girl said a phrase that everything in this world would be forgotten and disappear, and the soul of the deity began to leave his body. Finally, one of the youngest children completed the ritual, and her father sincerely praised her. Now the children had to clean the house, and Lu Yuntin was about to throw out the trash. The owner of the establishment grabbed the insolent man and decided to pay his bill. He began to take off his clothes to sell them, or use them in other ways. The man, not paying attention, continued throwing out the trash and dragging the scoundrel. Night fell, and they found themselves in a forest next to a small lake. The hero placed the body of the deity on a small raft and bowed before him, apologizing for what had happened. He did all this for his children and hoped that the kingdom of heaven would understand him. Having pushed off the raft, he wanted the body to float down the river, seeing off the deceased. And so it happened, and Lu Yuntin paid tribute to the deity. Turning around, the man noticed a stranger approaching him. It was really surprising, because he didn't expect to meet a person from the succubus race. The succubus girl continued to stand near the main character. Worried, Lu wanted to know if she was a ghost. It turned out to be true. The succubus smiled and asked the man if he was afraid of her. The hero didn't really feel afraid of her because he was brave enough to make even Sadako herself go on vacation. So the mysterious stranger asked him to come closer, and the man was even more confused by this. While waiting, the villainess tried to get the man to come even closer. Suddenly, waving her whip, she shouted that she wanted Lu Yuntin died. Suddenly the girl had a strange feeling, an understanding that something was wrong. Because her enemy had dodged and she could no longer move. Using the power of justice, the protagonist decided to defeat the enemy and destroy him. A lightning strike struck the demonic creature, causing it to scream in pain. With a heavy sigh, the succubus realized that her magic had no effect on this man. Lu Yunting admitted that this succubus had a very weak seduction technique, while Lu's skills Bing is far superior to her, and she tried to seduce a man who has 7 children with the goddess, as well as one who has crossed a vast ocean and feels virtually no fear. These words made the girl even more angry, and she wanted to attack again, realizing that she could be defeated. The attack was immediate, and the succubus took action, swinging her whip and attacking. The hero did not appreciate this behavior and ordered her to stop making him repeat it, comparing the squashing of a watermelon with the need to maintain freshness. The succubus couldn't understand what the normal person was talking about, and continued to attack. Meanwhile, the guy managed to escape and hid in the bushes as if nothing had happened. He intended to make a surprise attack, knowing that even if the succubus wanted to become the mother of his children, and he will never agree with this. The demonic creature warned him against dreaming about it, and the brave warrior used his magical abilities. Using his hand, the man began to call upon the power of the ancient race. His hand, transformed into a titan fist, became huge and powerful. Spewing out anger, the young man shouted that a woman who is unable to become a mother is a bad woman. Using all his strength, the hero delivered an incredibly powerful blow straight at the succubus to disable her. The force of the blow was astonishing, and the girl flew several hundred meters and hit a pile of rocks. Also, Lu Yuntin decided to use his divine powers and commanded the Eye of Justice to open. Unable to bear the man's insolence, the succubus took action, transforming into a more powerful form. While the protagonist was trying to attack the demon, she was already behind him and preparing for a counterattack. The uninvited guest could not stand the man talking so much and ordered him to be silent. Suddenly, the silhouette of the creature he had just summoned appeared near the man. This creature was able to provide protection to a person, as it was called specifically for this purpose. The blow from the golden golem was astonishingly powerful. It literally turned the succubus into stone. The demon could not understand how this was possible and why an ordinary person had such power. With all her might, the girl tried to understand how an ordinary mortal could be so powerful. The smart guy decided to explain to the scoundrel who wanted to kill him that he had learned all these skills from his children. He said that he learned all these techniques from his children. The demon did not like this behavior, and she screamed that she would no longer tolerate such treatment. It turned out that he just wanted to see if the succubus had anything interesting that he could give to his children. While studying the succubus's body, the hero tried to find where they usually keep their things. The succubus pointed to the vessel and said that they usually kept all their things there. Without hesitation, Lu Yuntin grabbed it and said that this would be gratitude on his behalf for his children. The girl was very upset that her own equipment was taken away, and the man did not even pay attention to it. Lu left for home. All he could think about was what Lu had Bing Bing will finally get his own gear. Meanwhile, the succubus watched him, not believing that the man was going to leave just like that, because she was already prepared for the worst, and he only talked about his children, like a real caring father. Feeling angry, the girl tried to calm herself down, reminding herself that it was not this unfortunate man who was irritating her. Suddenly, the succubus had a hologram that allowed them to contact their comrades. One of the brothers exclaimed that everything was ready and the girl could return. The lady said that she had forced the enemy to retreat, but that he would soon return, and yet her comrade did not believe it. Seeing her dirty face, he realized that he had passed through her without difficulty. Unable to bear her comrade's insolence, the girl ordered him to get out. Meanwhile, the protagonist was walking home, thinking that he never thought that throwing out trash would bring him unexpected benefits. As he passed by the elder, he saw him training. The old man's muscles were of impressive size, and he was in excellent shape. The elder could lift heavy weights and easily handled a weight of 330 kilograms. The hero literally could not believe his eyes, expecting that the elder would not be capable of this. Turning around, the elder saw Lu Yuntina asked him to come into the house, and the hero did not understand why the head of the village was not sleeping at such a late hour. The old man explained that with age comes a lot of worries, but they go away when you pull iron, and the young man was surprised that the village chief trained so hard. This was unusual for the elder, but he couldn't do anything about it, as more and more strange people had been coming to the village in recent days. Turning to the boy, the elder asked if he would fight if his children needed protection and if his life was in danger. Lu Yuntin replied that, of course, he would protect his children. He smiled and added that he didn't think they would need it. The village chief also wanted to know if the boy would fight for the village if it was in danger. Lu Yuntin confirmed that he would, of course, do so. However, he expressed confidence that such a need would not arise. Therefore, the elder advised him not to try to help in case of danger to the village, but to take his children and go away. After this, the old man offered wine to show that Lu Yuntin agrees with his words. This offer really surprised the main character. He did not expect that the old man would refuse his help. The kind-hearted old man said goodbye, asking not to worry about him. As he left the elder's house, the hero realized that he still had to return home first. He decided to drink the wine that the old man gave him, and only then went home. When he returned home, the father immediately noticed that his children were very depressed. Worried, he did not understand what had happened to the boys and why they were behaving like this. He asked Sue's elder brother what had happened and found out that his child had been kidnapped. The hero felt furious and could not believe what he heard, not knowing who dared to kidnap his child. The elder brother said that he saw a group of beautiful women carrying Xiao Shina is unconscious. The father could not understand how his brother could allow this, but he explained that he realized that he was no match for such enemies. He ran to the other children to warn them and prevent them from being kidnapped. One of the sons admitted that his brother desperately tried to stop him, but he understood the situation after his older brother explained. Another son said his brother was afraid they might be ambushed and thought it was the right decision. Lu Yunting thanked his elder brother for taking care of the children, but he was confident that he was a good father and could save Xiao Shina. The father was more worried about the beautiful women who kidnapped his son. After all, his son is quite strong, but he was still kidnapped. The caring father began chasing, shouting for his son to be released and attacking him. The children watched him and couldn't understand when he would finally grow up. The chase continued, and the protagonist ran after them to the crime scene. On the way, Lu noticed a chicken and decided to approach it. I wanted to know if the chicken had seen a group of women carry off a child, but the chicken only shook its head. A few meters further, Lu caught another chicken, intending to ask it the same question. The alarmed hen cried out that he was going in the wrong direction, as they had gone the other way. In a state of alarm, the chicken also cried out that it was the succubus women from the devil's cave who had taken the child into the cave. After releasing the chicken, Lu shouted that his child had nothing to fear because he would come and save him. Sometime later, events took place in a scarlet cave. Many succubi approached the master, informing him that they had returned. Watching the boy who was brought into the cave, the master immediately realized that he was very strong. It seemed that the master's instructions were correct. His vision had indeed led them to a majestic power. The child's bloodline has already begun to awaken, and in a few years, there may be no one else on the continent who can match him if he reaches his full potential. The master was looking forward to the moment when she could absorb his power and potential. So she ordered the boy to be taken to her chambers. Sometime later, events unfolded in the main character's house, and morning came. The children continued to wait for their father and could not understand why he did not return with one of the children for so long. Some of them began to become seriously worried, assuming that their father had been kidnapped by mysterious women. Realizing that he needed to work, Shiao Chong announced that they would be opening business as usual today and everyone should go to the kitchen and get ready. Each of the children took up the task, and Shiao Chong began wiping down tables to make the restaurant comfortable for the guests. A child with fire manipulation abilities set fire to the stove and heated a frying pan to cook food. One of the girls ordered the chickens to be reborn because she planned to sacrifice them to prepare delicious dishes. The chickens were confused, not understanding why they were about to suffer such a hard fate. Within a few minutes, all the chickens were ready to cook. The thrifty child quickly carried all the chicken carcasses to start preparing the food. Together, they did everything necessary to ensure that the restaurant continued to operate as usual. Smart and resourceful children decided to continue their work throughout their lives, no matter what. At this time, events continued to develop near the mountain, and Lu realized that they were too far away, and he ran for so long that dawn had already broken. Sighing heavily from shortness of breath, Lu Yuntin promised himself that he would no longer save his children. Soon he approached the Scarlet Cave, where the devil was supposed to be located and had to be defeated. Father started shouting at Xiao Shenu so that he goes home. Realizing that his son would not hear him, the caring father began shouting again for the child to come home. Even the birds woke up from this cry and began to fly nearby. One of the succubi came out of the cave and asked why there was such a noise early in the morning, preventing people from sleeping. In the end, the succubus asked the man who he was looking for in this cave. The father said that last night they took home a child of about 7 or 8 years old who was very dangerous, and they needed to bring him here to get him home. These words only caused the succubus to laugh, and she asked if everything was all right with his head. The hero said for the last time that the child should be brought here as soon as possible. But the succubus did not listen to him and ordered him to leave because there was nothing for him to look for here. The caring father realized that he would have to abandon the succubus and continue searching for his child. After all, he came here to save the succubi from his son, and not the other way around. And using the power of the ancient race and the Titan's fist, Lu Yunting struck the entrance of the cave with force. The succubus couldn't believe her eyes when she saw that an ordinary person was capable of such a thing. The blow was so strong that the girl fell into the abyss and was unable to resist. Father entered the cave and shouted at Xiao Shina to restrain himself because he would soon take him home. Meanwhile, the devil himself was next to Xiao Shun, and the ritual was about to begin. The Scarlet Devil's follower was about to perform a ritual to absorb all of this boy's power. Leaning down, the succubus told her master to allow her to begin the ritual and draw power from the holy child. The girl begged the master to let her do it. The Scarlet Demon laughed and asked the succubus how he could not reward her for her obedience. This made the girl even happier, because she didn't expect the demon to allow her to take such great power. The devilish scoundrel realized that the succubus deserved it and allowed her to go and enjoy her reward. Enchanted by the appearance of the young man, the scoundrel liked how his face was pleasant to the eye, and his strength was impressive, and he also smelled very delicious. As soon as the magic was cast on the guy, he instantly woke up and began to look at the demon who was trying to charm him. Looking around, the guy realized that he couldn't use his power or even move. Suddenly Xiao Shun began to scream and transform into a demonic creature with many arms. The stunned girl didn't understand what was happening because she only wanted to absorb the guy's power, but now it seemed unlikely. Without hesitation, the succubus once again tried to use her magical abilities to stop Xiao Shina. But the lady soon realized that she could not do this, and the ceremony was interrupted. The angry boy began to turn into a demon and easily broke the chain that held him. Not knowing what to do in such a situation, the girl continued to watch what was happening and did not know if she could survive. The young man was furious, feeling that the succubus wanted to take his power, and now he was ready to give it to her entirely. But the huge amount of energy proved too much for the girl, and it led to a powerful explosion at the scene. Thus, the succubus was easily defeated and no longer existed. The smug guy continued to watch everything that was happening, rejoicing in his victory over the impudent girl. Laughing, the being inside the boy realized that he had to express gratitude to this woman because she had been very helpful. Trying to free himself, the demon realized that he was unable to do so. It was impossible since his body couldn't even overcome such a low-level seal. No matter what happens next, the next time he wakes up, no one will dare to confront him. Having transformed back into a human, Shiao Chong decided to go to bed so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Meanwhile, events unfolded on the surface, where the main character fought with succubi, and it seemed to him that he became like the legendary heroes from fairy tales. The man literally begged to let him through because he came here to save all the succubi. But the girls didn't care and were going to protect the altar and destroy all the invaders. The fight continued, and Lu Yuntin continued to fight the impudent demons to save his son. He also asked the succubi not to create problems for themselves, as he had come here to save them. In any case, the succubi did not want to listen to him and continued to fight to the last. The man's strength was impressive, and he easily overpowered many of the succubi that stood in his way. Sighing heavily, the hero also realized that communicating with women was very tiring for him. Having defeated all the women in his path, he moved on to his son to free him. Having captured one of the succubi, the father tried to find out where they had taken the kidnapped child. The trembling and crying succubus cried out that the owner of the cave had taken the child to the sacred altar. Having thanked the succubus, the hero threw him with force straight into the rock and continued on his way. As the father continued on his way forward, he realized that the owner of the cave had nothing to fear. Because Lu Yuntin came here to save everyone who was stuck in this cave. Having burst into the room where his son was, the father immediately began asking Xiao Shina where the owner of the cave is located. Not understanding what was happening, the son asked his father not to worry about him too much, claiming that he was fine. The caring father cut the chain to free his son. And immediately after that, he began to interrogate him, assuming that Xiao Shun killed the owner of the cave, but the son began to argue with his father, saying that Lu Yuntin must take care of him. Having come to his senses, the man realized that this was indeed the case and decided to find out why his son had been kidnapped, but the guy could not answer this, since he himself did not know. Suddenly, the young man remembered that they had to open the store in the morning, and they were not there. With all my might, Xiao Shan ran towards the house to come and open the store as soon as possible, dragging his father along with him. All the strong succubi were amazed by the incredible strength of the young man, who easily lifted the strong Lu Yuntina and pulled him away. The entire incident was also observed by the Scarlet Demon, who was beside himself with rage over what had happened. From a feeling of anger, the demon even began to burn, as if demonstrating his rage. Some time later, events unfolded in the village. Some men asked the boss why they landed in this remote village. The boss replied that they had arrived on the orders of the chief. But still, the men could not understand how it was possible that the hope of their Wuhuan clan would live in such a remote village. Meanwhile, events unfolded in the main character's house, where his children tried to serve all the customers in the restaurant. One of the daughters saw shooting stars and was very surprised that the shooting stars started in the morning. The clever girl made a wish for her father to earn as much money as possible, and with the money he earned, he bought her as many sweet potatoes as he could. Suddenly, the girl felt someone approaching her and immediately opened her eyes. In front of her stood a group of cheeky guys who looked quite threatening. Blushing a little, the girl immediately greeted the strangers. The brazen types started to enter the restaurant, and the girl tried her best to stop them. The embarrassed little girl screamed that she couldn't enter their restaurant now. Jumping off the table, she continued to scream and try to block their way, saying that her dad said that everyone had to stand in line to eat. This behavior did not touch the boss at all, and he wanted to continue moving forward. The kind-hearted girl offered the men a treat of her favorite sweet potatoes if they stood in line. The boss got angry and knocked the sweet potato out of the girl's hands, shouting that it was food for the poor and that she had offered it to him specifically to insult his Wuhuan clan of fire sorcerers. Coming closer, the other man told the girl to get out of their way because their older brother had a very bad character. This behavior seriously angered the girl. She did not expect that men would be so cruel. Feeling very sad, she began to cry, because this was the best food she could offer them. The bandits continued to ignore the girl and walked past her as if nothing had happened. All the visitors also began to look at the strangers and froze in anticipation, realizing that something was wrong here. The looks of the restaurant's patrons were murderous, as if they were real murderers. Suddenly, someone behind the villains shouted for them to stop where they were. One of the villains wanted to know where the owner of the restaurant was. The good brother told the scoundrels to apologize to Xiao Yu right now. The strangers began to doubt that they had come to the right place, but the boss convinced them that they had come here on the orders of the chief. The strangers were very surprised to see that the guy in front of them had fire abilities. The boss couldn't understand how some kid dared to force him to apologize because no one could force him to do it. The young man was prepared for this development and asked what he would do if another argument was used in the conversation. The strangers who came were amazed that such a young guy could wield an unquenchable flame. The bandits looked at each other and realized that the hope of their tribe, the Wuhuan clan, was this child. The stunned boss asked the young man not to waste his talent here, but to go with his tribe. But this did not calm the guy down, and he again asked the scoundrels to apologize to his sister. At first, the boss agreed to apologize, but suggested that the guy go with them so that he could come back later and apologize to his sister. The guy was not satisfied with this proposal, and he was skeptical about the scoundrels who came here. The boy realized that a fight in the restaurant would attract the attention of visitors and villagers, and this could be dangerous. Moreover, the bandits' flames could harm the restaurant, which is the painstaking work of his father. Therefore, the guy did not agree to go with the bandits, preferring to find a remote place for a fight. Walking forward, the child decided to go with the villains to preserve the integrity of the restaurant. As they passed near the village, the bandits thought that the child might become gloomy and attack them from behind. Suddenly, stopping abruptly, the young man attracted attention. The boss turned to him, although they should have kept moving. All this happened because the villains took so long to apologize to him and his sister. The guy's patience ran out, and he decided to act. The boss asked again if the guy had really run out of patience. The villains did not believe his words, considering him just a child, incapable of resisting them. Using his magical powers, the young man shouted that he would turn all the villains into ashes. The villains felt a strong heat and looked at each other in confusion, not understanding what was happening. Despite the fact that their connection with the fire of the Wuhuan began to ignite the flame, and they were never afraid of fire. But none of the villains expected that the unquenchable flame would be so scorching. Outraged, the boss believed that such a rare gift should not have been given to him, considering it cruel and wasteful. By changing his magical technique, the scoundrel wanted to demonstrate his capabilities to the young man. The guy easily avoided the weak and slow blow. The Junone's accomplices shouted that the boy would not be able to escape and that they would eventually carry him away with them. They kept trying to persuade the guy to just follow them. Gradually, the men surrounded the boy and ordered him to stop testing their patience. Watching this, boss wanted to understand what was happening to this guy's unquenchable flame. Suddenly, the fire-wielding guy began to transform right before the bandit's eyes, his eyes glowing bright red and fire blazing around him. The opponents could not believe their eyes and could not understand how this was possible. The youth once again demanded that the scoundrels apologize to Shiao Yi, otherwise he could not guarantee his safety, as the Wuhuan tribe members had a connection with fire and were not afraid of high temperatures. But even the sorcerers of the Wuhuan tribe found it difficult to withstand such a high level of flame as the immortal flame, and neither tough skin nor fire resistance could withstand its heat. The nature of the immortal flame is extremely domineering and tyrannical, and its temperature is so high that no force can resist it. The worried boss began to repeat that once the immortal flame was ignited, it would never go out, and its improper use could be the last for its owner. The opponents were in despair, realizing that they were powerless against such a guy. But the boss continued to insist that the guy's behavior was extremely stupid and unjustified. If the boy continues to use his power, his foundation will be destroyed, and he will no longer be able to use magic. Worried about the boy, the boss ordered his servants to stop him. The companions immediately applied their magical abilities, not wanting to interfere with the fight, but seeing that their boss could not cope, he asked them to join in to stop Shiao Chan. They were all strong and high-ranking members of the Wuhuan clan, and the current situation could not be ignored, and the main focus was on stopping Shiao as soon as possible. China, for damage to its foundation, could lead to the loss of hopes for the future legacy of the clan. The only thing that matters to the heir is for the criminals to convey their apologies to Shiao Yi, and only then will he be able to calm down. Continuing his attack, boss wanted to understand why the boy was so angry about a common sweet potato and a common man, so much so that he resorted to desperate methods. Using his magic, the chieftain threw fire grenades, quickly aiming at the target. Shiao Chong watched the proceedings carefully, developing tactics to combat multiple opponents. Powerful attacks were coming from all sides, with several opponents trying to attack at the same time. The skilled guy easily dodged the first two villains, jumping several dozen meters up. While watching the fire grenades, he also considered how to avoid colliding with them. Using his body, Shiao Chong handled the fire grenades with ease and withstood their fire. The clan boss couldn't believe his eyes when this guy actually decided to use his body to counter his fire grenades. Despite all this, the bandit wanted to continue the fight, but he wondered if it would harm the heir. With each passing second, the flames in front of him grew stronger and stronger, and he realized that his situation was getting worse. The escape began. The boss shouted to his men to hurry too, because the situation was becoming dangerous. The servants did not understand what was happening and tried to get an explanation from their boss. Boss sighed heavily and admitted that the situation was getting very bad for them, and this guy had just broken through. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking that criminals should no longer apologize. Xiao Yi's fried sweet potatoes anyway. And criminals don't deserve to live, so they will have to die. At the same time, events were developing with the main character, who asked his son to slow down. Shiao Chong was against this, arguing that they had little time and needed to hurry. The father assured his son that nothing would happen to those who remained at home, since Xiao was with them. Chong. The alarmed young man shouted to his father, assuming that Shiao Chong is probably not at home because he felt that something had happened to him. This guy really had a feeling that his second brother was in trouble and they needed to get back as soon as possible. Hearing this, the man immediately realized that his running speed was superior to Zhao's. Shinya. Then the son realized that during his previous competitions with his father, he always lost. Suddenly, they stopped, and the son wanted to know from his father what had happened. Suddenly, Lu's hand, Yentina, caught fire when a fire broke out near her. No one could understand why the father was emitting the fiery aura of the second brother. It turned out that Cheng's blood was connected to an immortal flame that possessed supernatural powers. It seems that he has overcome the limitations of bloodline, and, being linked to it, has also gained the immortal flame as happened before with his children. Luckily, the father was okay, and they continued on their way to save Xiao Chun. The fight continued, and Xiao Chong became enraged, wanting to take revenge on the bandits for their brazen act. The villains were stunned and powerless, standing in place and watching as the boy gained his strength. The boss was furious and understood that if he didn't bring the guy to his senses, he would never realize his true dignity and the inferiority of the world. Having risen into the air, the villain began to use his supernatural abilities, causing balls of flame. Immediately after that, an attack from the air began. The scoundrel tried his best to defeat Xiao Chun by any means necessary. The impudent man sincerely believed that the boy would not be able to dodge this attack, because it seemed impossible. But the spectators of the fight felt that the guy was not going to dodge the blows, but was simply standing in place. Feeling furious, Xiao Chong began to use his magical abilities and parried the blows with all his might. Continuing to fight, the criminal could not understand how this was possible, because his opponent did not even move to the side, but did not receive a single scratch. Xiao Chong summoned his totem Fire Crow, and its fury was unmatched. The fiery creature was ready to destroy any enemy who stood in the way of its master. The red-haired scoundrel couldn't believe his eyes, and his opponent was able to summon a golden raven with incredible power. Now, the villains realized that they would not get off so easily, and they would have to fight to their last breath, and this fight became a fight to the death. The boss admitted that in 1,000 years of existence, the Wuhuan tribe had never seen such an amazing talent, and the fire of the Golden Crow was summoned, and now they cannot cope. The tribe's subordinates immediately asked the boss whether they would continue to fight in such an unequal battle. At this time, Xiao Chong prepared to attack and summoned a golden crow to finish the fight. The raven had an unpredictable power, as no one had ever summoned it before, and its power was truly terrifying. The bandits realized that they could not cope with such a powerful enemy and tried to escape. With each passing second, the raven was getting closer to his enemies, preparing to attack and showing his true fury. In order to survive, the bandits began to consider whether to ask forgiveness from their enemy's sister, hoping for mercy. Closing his eyes, the boss thought that they were already dead and would not be able to continue the fight. Opening their eyes, the opponents found Lu in front of them, Yintin, who demanded an explanation as to why they dared to intimidate his son. The bandits retreated and began to beg for mercy, despite their previous aggression. The alarmed boss, along with his men, began to sincerely apologize, claiming that they had not been involved in bullying his son. But the protagonist still wanted to know why they came for Xiao Chong and what are their intentions. Trying to remain calm, the worried boss continued to say that they had no intention of harming his son. The persistent hero continued to watch them and waited for an answer to his question, because their behavior in battle was suspicious. Continuing to watch Lu Yintina, the bandit realized that if they tried to fight him, they would die, as his fiery aura left them no chance. Under severe stress, the villain continued to make excuses in the hope of survival. Then he exclaimed that they were merely trying their hand, for it was better than admitting their incompetence, and his brothers had never seen their boss in such an exhausted state, unable even to express his thoughts clearly. The answer really surprised the man, and he asked if it was true, because such words were difficult to accept on faith. Pointing at Xiao Chong, the villain began to talk about how he had already mastered the secret technique of the ancestors of the clan of sorcerers, and they studied together with him. The difficulty of this technique was really high, and it took a long time to practice on his own, and this guy was not only talented and smart, but also simply amazing, and he trained only once, but he already successfully mastered it, and the bandit really admired him. The henchmen couldn't believe that the boss was so persistent in looking for a way to save them, and they even began to believe that he would be able to do it. Looking at his son, the hero began to understand that this was really not bad. But Liu Yuntin also believed that it was important for guys like them to maintain their karma. After all, they learned from his son, but did not even want to thank him, and the bandits, in turn, understood that money was not as important as their lives. That is why they decided to give all their savings to thank the young man who taught them. The money really made the protagonist happy, and he wanted to take it all to show the impudent people that they had offended his son. Still, money helped in this conflict, and Liu Yuntin was less angry this time because he now had a fortune. The man even wanted to forgive the impudent people, and they began to leave. However, the caring brother could not allow such an outcome and ordered the bandits to remain in place. The young man remained furious and ordered them to apologize to his sister immediately. The stunned bandits stopped and, as if petrified, realized that they had no choice but to apologize. Turning to his son, the father wanted to know what had happened, and Shiao Chong said they stepped on a sweet potato that Shiao Chong and Shiao Chan shared with them. That is why the brother was furious and ordered the impudent people to apologize to his sister. After learning that this was true, the hero realized that this conflict needed to be resolved and asked Shiao Chong meet Shiao Chan, who was on his way here, and then go home with him to calm down Shiao. Dad also asked them to buy some sweet potatoes and give them to their sister to comfort her. Watching his father, Shiao Chong realized that this was an omen that his father's anger was about to burst out. The man continued to ponder the fate of the scoundrels and what to do with them. His anger knew no bounds, and he shouted at the impudent men, asking how they dared to mock a child. The frightened scoundrels turned around when they heard someone speaking to them. The next moment, a powerful blow flew straight at the boss's head, who was completely unprepared for it. There was a loud explosion, and the servants were very afraid for their boss, not understanding what was happening to him. Trembling with pain, the impudent man began to rise from the floor, trying to stand on his feet with timid movements. However, he was too exhausted after the strong blow directly to the head, and he was unable to get up. Tears welled up in the bandit's eyes, realizing that this guy's strength was terrifying. The fire of the golden raven stood behind him, above his level, and the bandit could not resist its flames. Stepping right onto the villain's chest, the hero continued to beat him until he apologized. Looking into his eyes, Liu Yuntin wanted to know if he now regretted his actions. By kicking the impudent man straight in the head, the protagonist aimed to deliver a fatal blow. The impact occurred, and an even more powerful explosion followed, accompanied by a column of smoke. The clan servants couldn't believe their eyes when they saw that their boss had been defeated, and they wanted to avenge him. Feeling incredible rage, the villains realized that their opponent was capable of causing serious harm to their older brother, and they were going to fight him. The protagonist was much more cunning than these villains and used his magical powers to resist them. Using a beam of flame, he easily neutralized the two villains who were attacking him. The blow was so powerful that it created a column of fire that engulfed the enemies and made it impossible for them to continue fighting. Experiencing severe pain, the enemies cried out that they did not want to die so early and begged not to be burned. Trying to defend themselves, they shouted for Liu Yuntin did not approach them and did not kill them. Luckily for them, the fight ended and they began to hope that they could avoid death this time, as they no longer wished to continue this painful battle. The father stood over his opponents and ordered them to apologize to his daughter. The exhausted boss struggled to his feet to apologize to the girl he had offended. The caring man, despite his anger, ordered them to go with him. Liu Yuntin turned and headed home, leading the scoundrels who had bullied his daughter behind him. Meanwhile, the brothers walked home carrying a large quantity of sweet potatoes, knowing that this would bring joy to their sister. When they arrived home, they didn't find Shiao and wondered where she could be, given the amount of potatoes they had brought for her. They soon found their little sister in the corner, crying because the bandits didn't appreciate her sweet potatoes. The brothers tried to comfort her and expressed their concern. Shiao was glad that the brothers returned. Shiao Chong stroked her head and asked why she was crying. He assured her that the brothers had already taught the scoundrels a lesson. They then gave her a bucket of sweet potatoes to comfort her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a bucket of potatoes and felt much better. She thanked her brothers and began to eat the treat. At this time, restaurant patrons began to complain discontentedly about the long wait and slow service. Each of the hungry diners was furious at the long wait. The worried brother came out to the visitors and apologized for the delay. Suddenly, someone nearby asked the visitors not to be angry. It turned out that it was a smart girl who offered them sweet potatoes to cheer them up. She wanted to treat everyone to make the atmosphere more friendly. Visitors were impressed by the generous gesture and stunned by the idea that they would be offered a treat absolutely free of charge. Everyone who came here felt genuine joy, thinking that Shiao was a truly kind person, and she looked charming and had an incredibly kind heart. Influenced by the comments of those around her, The girl blushed and began to thank all those uncles and aunts who came to them today. Suddenly, someone nearby shouted that they were experiencing a strange and wonderful feeling. It was a grandfather who threw away his cane because he no longer needed it. As the older man continued to eat the sweet potato, he noted that he felt different afterwards. He felt as if his youth had returned to him and the muscles in his arms began to develop. Everyone noticed that their illnesses began to go away, and some people's backs stopped hurting and their headaches went away, and all of this was felt by those who tried sweet potatoes. When the bandits arrived at the family's home, they were surprised to see that everyone around them was eating sweet potatoes. It turned out that this potato was specially blessed by the shaman. It improved health and physical fitness. Also, thanks to his blessing, he could even improve the mood of people. This girl was truly unique because she did something very impressive. Even the boss couldn't hold back his tears, realizing that the little girl seemed to have brought a blessing to the entire village. The younger sister was a real sweetheart, while the bandits treated her rather roughly today. Kneeling before the girl, the villains admitted their mistake and sincerely asked for forgiveness for their cruel behavior. As they got closer, the boss wondered if they could also get some sweet potatoes as a treat. Looking at the empty bucket that had previously held sweet potatoes, the girl tried to feel for them so she could share them with the bandits. But it turned out that the potatoes had run out and they wouldn't get any treats. The girl began to doubt, because if the bandits waited too long, they might get angry again, and perhaps she should offer them the potato that she had in her hand, but her brothers sincerely wanted to treat the guests. And so, in this situation, the choice was ambiguous. The girl had one last piece of potato left, but she still decided to share it to treat her guests. Laughing, the boss offered the girl to keep the last piece for herself, but she replied that she was already full. In any case, the girl was very happy that she was able to treat them to sweet potatoes, but now she asked them to stand in line and behave decently. The gang leader did his best to taste the true flavor of the potato by biting into it with force. As soon as he did this, he had a very strange feeling that he had never had before. After biting into the potato, his broken arm was instantly healed, the pain disappeared, and the taste and aroma filled his soul. After breaking the potato, the boss decided to share it with the rest of the group. Although they had behaved badly towards the girl before, they now realized that her intentions were sincere. With tears in his eyes, the man realized that his clan of fire sorcerers had lived in the fiery realm of demons for generations. But their hearts always remained kind, and in their souls they were real good people. All the men began to cry and again begged the girl to forgive them, realizing their guilt for violating her hospitality. Watching the strangers, people tried to understand who they were and why they were treating the girl so politely. Suddenly, the little sister remembered who these people really were, those who trampled her potatoes. She wanted to forget about it, since the second brother had already punished them. Feeling guilty, the boss decided to give the girl a gift to express his sincere repentance. Refusing the gift, the girl exclaimed that she did not need handouts from them. Without listening to her, the man still placed the ring on the bucket, expressing his gratitude. The villains again bowed before their little sister and begged her to accept the gift. The whole time the father watched them, making sure that they were truly repentant. The caring father was glad that everything went well, although at first he expected that he would have to teach them a lesson before they would apologize, and he did not expect that they would take the initiative themselves. The frightened bandit continued to watch the man, thanking him for raising his daughter well. Smiling, the boss still asked if they could leave already, but Lu Yuntin asked them to wait, and if he let them go, they would no longer cause trouble in the village. Because of this, the man wanted to ask his son, Shiao Chan, accompany them, but the leader of the group could not understand what they were going to do. None of the gang knew who Shiao was, Chun, and they were waiting for him to leave this place. As soon as the guy left the house, the bandits were simply stunned, and they could not even imagine that an ordinary person could have such a huge son. With horror, they finally realized that this Shiao Chun is the child of the same man who recently beat them up. The big son decided to turn to the bandits because his dad asked him to escort them out of the village, and it was time for them to leave. Shiao went outside the house. Chun decided to say goodbye to the strangers, and they could continue on their way. The bandits decided to say goodbye to their older brother and expressed hope for a quick meeting. But Shiao Chun was not an older brother. He was only 7 years old, and this shocked the villains. The villains no longer planned to return to this village, and Shiao Chun was glad that he had dealt with them, and now he could go home and eat. Meanwhile, strangers passed by the village and discussed that the master had told them that they would find a special person here, but they had not found him yet. These strangers were children and did not understand how difficult it was to find the right person in such a small village. Suddenly, they saw a big tall guy walking past them and decided to follow him to make sure. They say they need to catch the child, so they need to ask Shiao first. Shin, do they need it? 2 children approached the tall guy and said that they had finally found him. The guy was shocked because he didn't know why they were looking for him, since they didn't even know each other. The children were shocked that such a huge guy was also a child. The girl apologized and asked the stranger how old he would be this year. Shiao Chan replied that he would be 8 years old this year. The children realized that they had found the very child they were looking for. One of the impudent children began to drag Shiao Chun, saying that he urgently needed to go with them. The tall youth was confused and wanted to know who these strangers were and why he should go with them. The children, frightened, said that he didn't have to go if he didn't want to. The girl tried to deceive the giant by saying that they had a lot of tasty food. This caught Zhao's attention, Chun, and he decided to test this statement. The boy looked at them, wanting to know how much food they had so he could decide whether he should go with them. The cheeky girl said that they had a lot of food, endlessly, and this convinced Shiao Chen nah. The big guy called his father that he would return after eating. The children were happy that the task was completed. Events continued to unfold late at night in the cave. The angry children said to Shiao Chan told him that it was not yet time for the sacrifice and that he should stay, and the giant was stunned that he had been deceived by the promise of food. The cheeky child admitted that they had lied about the food and was surprised that Shiao Chen believed. Shiao Chen decided to find out if he had really been deceived and was ready to punish them. The children ran away, forgetting about the giant's strength. A few hours later, Shiao Chan waited for the children in the cave, but they were still not there. He realized that he was very hungry and that something needed to be done. Looking around, he saw a lot of food that looked very appetizing. Shiao Chan was pleased to see that the children had not lied about the food. He began to eat everything that came to hand in order to satisfy his hunger. In a matter of seconds, he ate all the food in the cave. The children continued to bring food, insisting that he needed to eat as much as possible. However, they clearly didn't expect that such a big guy would be able to swallow all that food so quickly and not even get full. It turned out that this food was actually intended for sacrifice, and Shiao Chan started using it. People immediately noticed this and shouted that it was necessary to immediately tie up this young man, since the food could not be consumed. The hungry boy clearly did not like this and ordered the people not to interfere with his eating, as his father told him it was bad for his digestion. He immediately began to push away everyone who attacked him, as he wanted to eat every last piece of food. Everyone present was shocked that such giants exist that are capable of eating such a quantity of food. Trembling with fear, no one could figure out how to act in this situation, as they had to sacrifice Shiao Chenu. Meanwhile, Lu Yuntin tried to make up for lost time by preparing food for a huge number of people. Despite the fact that night had fallen, he continued to cook to feed everyone. Exhausted from such hard work, because his new method of cooking was indeed convenient, but it was also necessary to train the children so that they could improve their skills. After thinking for a while, the father remembered that he hadn't seen Shiao Chen all day long. With his last strength, he began to scream, asking where his son was. But there was no answer, and he decided to ask the children where Shiao was. Children they told that he saw and not came back. Realizing that he was still a child, the father realized that Shiao Chan may have left the village and has no plans to return. One of the daughters also warned her father that she could not sense Zhao's aura Chun in the village, and Lu Yuntin wondered if she sensed any other strange auras nearby. As it turned out, the girl felt the auras of 2 more shamans, and probably Shiao Chun left with them. There have been some really strange things happening lately, and first Shiao was kidnapped Shina, then attacked Shiao Chong, and now Shiao Chan went missing, and this made his father very upset. In any case, the man understood that he needed to remain calm, because everything that was supposed to happen would definitely happen. The worried children wanted to ask their father if they should look for their brother, but Lu Yunting understood that because of Zhao's physique, Chun, they don't have to worry too much. Moreover, for Shiao Chun, there is probably not much danger in following shamans. The younger one realized that his father's words made sense, just like our Shiao Yi and the shaman's attack power was weak. While developing the next plan, the man asked his son to close the restaurant as it was getting late. When the restaurant was closing, one of the sons noticed the arrival of the village elder. Approaching the exit, Lu Yunting wanted to know why the elder came so late for dinner. It turned out that the elder didn't care about lunch, and he asked Lu Yuntina followed him to the Temple of the Earth behind the village, as the protector of humanity was looking for him. The hero could not imagine who the defender of humanity was and why he was looking for him. Finally, the father ordered his son to lock the door behind him and go to rest, but not to open the door if someone knocked, since he would soon return. With all his might, the hero tried to catch up with the elder to find out what exactly the defender of humanity wanted from him. Coming closer to the elder, Lu Yuntin wanted to know what the protector wanted and why he was looking for him. The man realized that the elder seemed to be familiar with the place, which was not surprising since the village was not far from the temple. An hour later, events were still unfolding, and the elder was walking at top speed, while the protagonist was already very tired. Finally, after a few minutes, they reached their destination. Overcoming his fatigue, the guy looked around, trying to understand what kind of place this was. There was a gloomy house nearby that frightened the man. Stunned, Lu Yunting asked the elder if this was really the place they needed to come to. The elder knocked on the door with a stick to let them in. At this time, the hero reflected on the fact that the old man was knocking on the door with a stick, perhaps because of rheumatism in his hands, but the elder explained that this was necessary to summon the protector of humanity. Looking at the stick, the man noticed that it was indeed large, but this did not surprise him, considering the age of the village elder. A flame burst into flames in front of the guests, and the door slowly swung open before them. A mysterious man with a very strange appearance appeared. The hero was greatly surprised by this unexpected turn of events, as he had expected the protector of humanity to be someone more impressive, not a fat middle-aged man. The man was very surprised that his guests did not bow when they saw the guardian of the human race, and Lu Yuntin wondered if this man was a true protector of humanity, and the old man confirmed his doubts. The hero was shocked, as he had imagined the protector of humanity as majestic and handsome, not like him, and did not expect him to be surrounded by a heroic aura. The old man continued to claim that he was indeed defending humanity, but the hero asked him to pay attention to his appearance, claiming that a true defender of humanity would not be so distracted by food. This behavior of the defender angered the hero, and he expressed his dissatisfaction, although he did not understand why the old man behaved so rudely. With a proud look, the protagonist continued to insist on his right to express an opinion, claiming that he did not see in the defender of humanity either a highly moral person or a person with amazing strength. The older, overweight man became even more angry, but the hero didn't understand why he was reacting that way since he hadn't said anything special. The experienced elder began to calm them down, pointing out that it was better not to discuss the reasons for Lu's summoning. Juntina, who was summoned from behind the lighthouse. After such an unclear answer, Lu began to think about his connection to the situation. Calm came a little later, and the defender of humanity became interested in whether the hero really wanted to know the reason for his summoning. Since the protagonist considered the defender of humanity to be shameless, he intended to force him to tell the truth, threatening to leave if he did not. Suddenly, the fat man stopped the guy and expressed a desire to share information, as he had to give up. Each race has its own territory with restrictions for other races, which prevents free movement. Once the lighthouse is built, anyone will be able to enter and exit a certain point at will without weakening their power. The beacon installed in their settlement will become a public entry point into their world. From here, the hero understood the reason for the problems that had arisen and realized that the lighthouse had become the source of these problems. Therefore, the defender of humanity sought Lu Yuntina to help solve this problem, and he wanted to know who and why installed the lighthouse. Although the old man found it difficult to answer this question, the hero is sure that Fatso knew about it from the beginning. The hero is interested in how to find and destroy the lighthouse, otherwise the village will not have peace. The keeper revealed that the lighthouse is an object of some kind, making it difficult to detect and destroy, but if the hero begs him, he can tell more. Sometime later, several unexpected events happened, and the defender of humanity begged to stop the attack because he was going to reveal the whole truth, and he believed that his daughter could help in finding the lighthouse, and this artifact would help destroy it. The sacred artifact turned out to be a frying pan, and the man did not know what to do with it in such a situation. It was the protector's wife's frying pan, and it was to be used to destroy the lighthouse, and Lu Yuntin even began to doubt whether she could help. A little taken aback, the defender convinced the guy that the frying pan could actually work. The old man said goodbye to the protector, and the man thought about what a terrible power this child possessed, and his supernatural power turned out to be unprecedented. The guardian of humanity was so depressed that he couldn't even resist. It may not have been by chance that he handed over his wife's frying pan, confident that Lu Yuntin can save this world. The village elder was busy with business and decided to say goodbye to the main character, and the good-natured guy waved back. However, the clever young man decided to examine the frying pan to make sure that it would really help destroy the lighthouse, and whether the defender of humanity was deceiving him. Fortunately, the frying pan turned out to be a real artifact, and now that the solution to the problem with the lighthouse had been found, there was no doubt about the need to destroy it immediately. At the same time, one of the daughters felt a familiar aura and realized that her father had returned to the village. The worried father asked his daughter to help him, but the girl did not understand why they needed to go somewhere, because it would soon get dark, and it was very late to go somewhere at this time. The father did not listen to his daughter and dragged her along with him, since they urgently needed to find something. The daughter immediately noticed the strange frying pan and wondered why her father was carrying it with him. Lu Yuntin was also a little confused, but he began to explain to his daughter that this was not a simple frying pan, but a magical artifact. That's why he asked his daughter to help him and check if there were any strange auras nearby. Using her magical abilities, the girl began to scan the space to determine if there were any suspicious auras in the area. Whispering, Lu Yuntin turned to his daughter to ask if she felt like someone was watching them. It turned out that there was a scarecrow not far from them that looked rather strange. Taking the frying pan in his hands, the main character exclaimed that he had finally seen the root of all the troubles that had been happening lately, and that this damn scarecrow was to blame for everything, and he was not going to forgive him for anything. The man was literally going to use it as a broom to clean the dirtiest places in the village. As they approached, the scarecrow suddenly moved, and the hero could not believe that this scarecrow could attack someone. It turned out that the scarecrow had the ability to think and understood that he needed to run away quickly because his life was of great importance. The frightened creature suddenly ran, moving at incredible speed. The clever protagonist decided to throw the magic artifact so that the enemy could not run far. As soon as the frying pan hit the scarecrow, it began to glow with bright red flashes, and a strange sound was heard. In an instant, the scarecrow disappeared, and the frying pan began to fall to the ground, continuing to glow with bright red flashes. Coming closer to the frying pan, the daughter wanted to understand whether this scarecrow could have struck a person, but her father explained to her that it was Mayak. It was because of this artifact that they had been having so many problems in the village lately. In that case, the clever girl exclaimed that they had really done a good job. Although it was unexpected, the frying pan of the wife of the defender of humanity turned out to be so powerful that the lighthouse was destroyed just by touching it. Now that the lighthouse has been destroyed, it will be very difficult for others to come here again, and even if they come again, they will not have enough strength. Suddenly, something very strange began to happen nearby, and the hero immediately paid attention to it. The fire nearby began to gradually flare up and had a very strange appearance. The girl immediately began scanning the area to check for the presence of someone else's aura. After a few seconds, the girl finally felt the usual aura that was nearby. The same aura was in the place where the scarecrow appeared, and it was obvious that the place where the scarecrow disappeared was unusual. Deciding to get closer, the hero began to reach out his hand to touch the fire that had arisen as a result of the battle with the lighthouse. But as soon as he got even closer, his hand began to absorb a strange fire that appeared out of nowhere. Feeling very strange, Lu Yuntin couldn't believe his eyes and didn't understand what was happening to him. Gradually, the main character began to change. He felt that an unknown substance had penetrated his body. The man started screaming out of fear because he understood that this should not have happened. He began to cry and shouted that he couldn't die here because it was just some kind of lighthouse. After a few minutes, his condition completely changed and he began to feel strange. Deciding to get rid of the problem, the hero struck the ground with all his might to destroy the strange fire that had entered his hand. The impact was so strong that it created a huge blast wave around them, and the daughter could not understand what was happening to her father. Watching her father, the girl understood that this was how he released his power, but she wanted to know if his body could withstand such a large flow of energy. Such a big noise is sure to alarm the residents of the surrounding villages because the release of energy was followed by explosions. Opening his eyes, the man began to look around to understand what had happened to him. The girl immediately saw that her father had come to his senses and wanted to know how he was feeling. Fortunately, this incident did not affect him in any way, and he was not only completely fine, but also became much stronger. Feeling very anxious, the girl asked her father to look around. The blast waves continued to surround them and move in different directions, as if during an earthquake. Suddenly, the people behind them started shouting, asking who dared to wake them up at such a late hour. Feeling that they were in danger, the father grabbed his daughter, and they quickly began to run towards the house. The events continued the next morning, and the girl could not sleep all night because of what happened to her father the night before. But when she finally fell asleep, the sky had already become bright, and she had to get up. The girl had a great desire to sleep because she had slept very poorly at night. But looking out the window, she did not understand why so many people had gathered at the door. The people nearby were discussing that the rice in the eastern part of the village had been destroyed, and they heard that an adult and a child were involved, who quickly escaped, and others heard that a great battle had taken place there, which was carried out by the immortals, but it had not affected the village. Feeling very awkward, the little sister decided to leave the people and ask her older brother to serve them. Suddenly, one of the visitors asked the girl to give him 5 fried dough sticks. The little sister sighed heavily, realizing that she would have to do this, and she agreed to serve the customers. Suddenly, one of the men approached because he thought that Xiao Lang resembled the short man who had destroyed the rice field last night. Luckily, other people disproved this, as the man's strength was terrifying. Despite this, the girl understood that it was her dad. At the same time, events continued to develop on the mountain, deep in the forest. The child begged someone not to eat the food of the ancestors, which was not intended for him. The giant didn't care, because for him, it was a tasty snack that filled him up a little. The cunning guy was already beginning to regret inviting the giant, because it was impossible to drive him out, and since he arrived, he had eaten more than half of their supplies. What was even more annoying was that he threw away the tasteless stuff that the shamans had worked so hard to produce. The glutton ate everything, and the guy already wanted to finish him off, and he was originally prepared as a sacrifice for the tribe of shamans to remove the curse of the body from them. The ritual had not yet begun, but all the food needed for it had been lost, and the boy was about to fight it. His little sister asked him to forget about it and discuss what to do next with the ritual. There was no more food for sacrifice, and the remaining half should not suffer because of the guy, and they need to do something, otherwise they will have nothing to eat. Feeling very angry, the young man ordered the giant to leave, and he no longer holds him. The giant exclaimed that he could not leave because he was not full yet. The cunning children regretted inviting him, as he had already eaten half of their supplies and could eat more. The boy started crying, screaming that they would have nothing to eat since he had eaten almost all of their supplies. The giant said that he was promised to eat as much as he wanted until he was full, so he definitely wouldn't leave. The child wanted to know what they had to do to make him leave. After some thought, the 7-year-old boy said that it was practically impossible. However, they had hope, which the giant wanted to tell them about. The couple began to listen attentively to the giant, pretending that they were very kind and attentive, so that he would tell them what to do so that he would leave here. The giant's condition was to receive a monthly food pass, and only after that would he leave the cave. Meanwhile, events continued to develop in the village. The main character worked hard to clean his house to make it clean. Suddenly, someone approached him, asking where Brother Lu was. Juntin. The man who came to the village had a very important matter for the hero. The tired man put down the boxes he had brought with him and wanted to tell something. It turned out that he had come to ask Yuntin for a favor, but the restaurant owner replied that he was full of customers and had no time to help. The man began to beg the protagonist to help him. The good-natured guy still agreed, because he considered himself brave and heroic and believed that he could help anyone. Chen needed to go away for a long time, so he wanted to ask one of his children to accompany him. His mother was also very kind, and the man thought that there would be no problems with her, so he was going to talk to the children. The friend thanked his brother and promised to sell him vegetables at a reduced price in the future. Understanding the benefits, Lu Yuntin immediately agreed to the deal. Returning home, Lu Yunting wondered which of the children to send to take care of the old lady, although Brother Chen was a good man, and his mother took care of the children. Looking around the room, the father realized that his children were not there and thought that they might be in the kitchen. Seeing his son, he asked where all the other children were. The frightened boy replied that he didn't know where they were. Suddenly, he whispered to his father that perhaps one of his sisters was eating sweet potatoes again. Taking a deep breath, the man realized that because of her, the restaurant was almost out of potatoes. When Lin Huan came, she could teach her father how to endlessly create sweet potatoes. A few days ago, a regular customer came into the restaurant wanting to try the preserved potatoes, and he searched the entire restaurant and found only one piece. This piece ended up with Shiao Yi, and since everyone was busy working in the restaurant, only one daughter was free. So the father tasked his son with finding a girl devoted to sweet potatoes. The girl was found in a matter of seconds, as she was easy to spot. She was very close by and was actually enjoying the sweet potatoes. Not understanding how this was possible, the father wanted to know from his daughter why she ate so many sweet potatoes. Hiding behind her brother, the girl screamed that she could eat less. Upset, Xiao said that she would not do that again and begged her father not to be angry. As she handed over her potatoes, the girl said she would not eat them anymore. Taking a deep breath, Lu Yuntin realized that he didn't want to deprive his daughter of her favorite treat. Coming closer, he begged her to continue eating potatoes and assured her that everything would be fine. He turned to her and told her about the old lady of the Chun family in the east of the village who had a lot of sweet potatoes and asked if she wanted to go there. The clever girl thought that she would gain the old woman's trust in order to steal all the sweet potatoes at night. They made a pinky pact that lasted for over 100 years, and whoever broke it would lose their potatoes for life, and the girl had to go to the old woman's house for 7 days to find Tibetan sweet potatoes and tell her father about it. Suddenly the son remembered that the old lady of the Chun family was growing a scarecrow, not potatoes. In any case, father needed to find a reason to send Xiao Yi, otherwise the potato supplies would really disappear. The caring brother really felt sorry for his sister because she was deceived. Meanwhile, Xiao Yi was approaching her destination and was not far from the old lady's house. A little scared, the little girl began to knock carefully on the door for the old woman to open it. This was followed by several more knocks on the door to attract the grandmother's attention. However, no one opened the door, and the girl thought that the old woman was probably not at home. The little sister thought about returning home, but remembered that the old woman must have a lot of Tibetan potatoes, which she had never tried. Suddenly the door began to creak and slowly open. This frightened the little girl, but she realized that the door was not locked. Looking inside the house through the door, the girl decided to find the place where the Tibetan potatoes were stored. Sneaking up to the house, someone from behind asked why Shiao came here. It turned out that it was an old woman, and the girl realized that she was caught. The girl was surprised to see her grandmother at home, because she did not expect to see her here. The worried girl realized that she might not be able to find out where the potatoes were kept. So Shiao hugged her grandmother and said that she came to take care of her. The child began to talk politely to her grandmother and even offered to help her get home, and the old woman thought that the girl was really good. In addition, Shiao looked around the entire house and checked every corner. Unfortunately, she couldn't find even a small piece of potato. The girl thought that perhaps the old woman had hidden the potatoes somewhere else, and she needed to continue her search secretly. Grandma needed help for just a few days, and the caring girl continued to do everything that was required of her. Looking around, Shiao thought that she needed to win the old lady's trust. Suddenly, she was attracted by a strange figure on one of the shelves. The figurine looked very much like a scarlet demon, and there were various foods on plates nearby. Despite the horrific discovery, the girl still decided to steal the plate that was next to the strange figurine. Shiao thought with particular delight about the sweet potatoes hidden by the old lady, and this made her very happy. The figurine on the shelf turned out to be unusual. It was the scarlet demon. Under the influence, the girl awakened the demon, and it suddenly began to emit a bright scarlet light. Magic rays illuminated the area around the grandmother, and she was left perplexed. The grandmother's sleeping body became an object for the scarlet demon, who, using his magical abilities, invaded it. Now it was not just a demon, but the very one that controlled the grandmother's body. The insidious and persistent abode of hell decided to take possession of the old woman's body in order to carry out his sinister plans. Meanwhile, the caring girl decided to bring some water to her grandmother. Shiao couldn't understand what happened to the old woman because she didn't respond. The elderly woman was acting strangely and motionless. Suddenly, the old lady invited Shiao to come closer. The happy girl offered her grandmother a drink of water, as she had asked earlier. The old woman's hands began to change. Her nails turned black and her skin became dull. The girl immediately noticed the changes and thought that the old woman had terrible nails. The grandmother's appearance and her sinister look attracted Zhao's attention. The girl dropped the kettle of water in surprise. The water, previously cold, suddenly began to boil. Having fallen to the floor, the girl could not understand what had happened to her grandmother and why she had changed. Leaning against the chair, the old woman began to slowly stand up, using her altered arms. Her appearance really scared the girl, because the old woman really did resemble a witch. Shiao was at a loss and wanted to understand what had happened to her grandmother, because she had always been sweet and kind, but now she had turned into a terrible monster. The worried girl felt that the old woman intended to harm her. Looking around, the girl tried to figure out how to get out of this situation. The frightened Shiao knew that she needed to escape from here as soon as possible. With all her might, the girl tried to bring her grandmother back to consciousness and screamed for her to come to her senses. But the grandmother didn't listen and began to wave her arms wildly, trying to hit Shiao. The clever girl was able to dodge the first blow, but she did not understand why all these events were happening. She also couldn't understand how the old woman could be so fast. Feeling intense fear, the girl tried her best to run away and screamed for help for her father. The girl began to cry, screaming about her fear and begging for help. The demon didn't care at all about this and sought to absorb Zhao's energy using their magical capabilities. A beam of bright red light headed towards the girl, ready to sap her of her life force. The demon's huge mouth was approaching, causing Shiao to worry about his fate. Suddenly, her sister opened her eyes, and there were no pupils visible in them. Instantly, she commanded the demon to bow before the true spirit. The stunned demon couldn't believe his eyes, expecting that now he would deprive the little girl of all her powers. But Shiao was determined and began to use her magical abilities to defeat the demon. The whole house was filled with bright light, penetrating even through the windows. Frightened by this development, the demon realized that he was losing in this situation. The awakened true spirit turned out to be much more powerful than the crimson demon that invaded the old woman's body. The blow to the impudent creature was instantaneous, and from its enormous force the demon crashed into the wall. After being subjected to intense pain, the scarlet demon began to emerge from the old woman's body, realizing that he had been defeated. The magic was so powerful that one blow was able to drive the demon out of an ordinary person. The girl felt very exhausted, as she had used up all her strength to defeat the hellish creature. When she woke up, the girl could not understand what had happened and began to look around. She tried to understand what had just happened and why she was lying on the ground, and she only remembered that her dad had asked her to go to the old lady's house to find out about a new variety of potato. Looking at her hand, she immediately realized that her powers had manifested and she was using them. This shocked the girl greatly. She could not believe that her powers had manifested themselves during her sleep, and it seemed to her that it was too simple. Standing on her feet, the girl thought about how it would be much easier for her to find sweet potatoes with her new power. The old woman, looking at what was happening, felt incredible surprise, unable to understand what had happened to her. Suddenly, the elderly woman also lost consciousness, fell to the floor, and remained lifeless. The girl approached the old woman and began to wake her up, begging her to come back to her. After some time, the elderly woman finally opened her eyes and saw a girl in front of her. The old woman's neck began to hurt, as if she was being strangled, and the girl begged her to rest, explaining that she had lost consciousness. The restless girl was eager to find out how the old woman ended up on the floor. The old woman, embarrassed, replied that she didn't remember how it happened, but she definitely needed rest, and Shiao was going to bring her some water. Shiao grabbed the glass and promised to return with water as soon as possible. Shiao, a caring girl, did not lose sight of the old woman and continued to look after her. Suddenly, the girl asked the old woman if she had any sweet potatoes because she was very hungry. After a moment's thought, the old lady explained that they had no sweet potatoes in their house. This answer disappointed the girl because she had heard that her grandmother had a lot of it, but it turned out that this was not true. In fact, Grandma didn't grow potatoes, but a scarecrow. Realizing that the potatoes were indeed missing, Shiao thought that her father had deceived her. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, trying to get in. The girl went to the door to see who was behind it and discovered that it was her dad. She felt his presence, but at the same time, she was annoyed because her father was deceiving them, which makes him a bad father. After opening the door, Shiao expressed her indignation, claiming that there were no sweet potatoes in the house and that her father had lied. The good-natured man assured her that he had never lied to his daughter and that there really were potatoes. And this was true, since the skilled Liu Yunting brought a whole bag of sweet potatoes with him, and his daughter was overjoyed. Kissing her father on the cheek, the girl expressed her gratitude to him, considering him the best father in the world. All these potatoes were specially for his daughter, and she could enjoy them to the fullest. Looking at her father, the daughter also reported that she had finally regained her powers. It turned out that the father had known about this for a long time and realized that his daughter had magical abilities. Although it was strange to the girl how her father knew about her magical abilities, it didn't matter now, and the main thing was that in front of her was a mountain of her favorite sweet potatoes. The girl was very hungry and wanted to eat all the sweet potatoes, but her father agreed to do so only on the condition that they return home. At this time, events continued to develop in the house. The children present in the house immediately noticed that Shiao Chan finally returned home. The sister was surprised that he returned so quickly because they didn't even have time to save him, but Shiao Chan knew they had never planned to save him. In fact, the father told the girl that there was no need to save Shiao Chan, and he added that his body was so strong that even weak shamans could not harm him, and yet the boy realized that, although his father was right, his older brothers could help. Shiao would eventually Chan was not kidnapped, but simply lured with tasty food. Shiao Chan was surprised that his sister knew about this. When the boy sat down at the table, he wanted to know why there was no one there, and when his brothers and their father would return. Although the girl was not sure, she assumed that they would return home soon. Upset by this answer, Shiao Chan started waiting because he wanted to see his father. Luckily, after a few minutes, Liu Yunting and Shiao returned home. The caring father was glad that one of his sons was back home and okay. Moving closer to his son, Liu Yunting immediately noticed that Shiao Chan had grown even bigger since they last saw each other. Still, the son wanted to tell his father about something he had almost forgotten. Surprised, the man asked his son what he wanted to tell him and whether it was something important. At this time, events were unfolding in the old woman's house, where her son had already returned. What he saw shocked him greatly, as he could not even imagine that his mother would look like this. Coming closer to the old woman, the son began to tremble, not understanding what had happened to his mother and why her face was so pale. The sleepy grandmother explained that she was fine, she had just accidentally fallen, but her son could not understand why she was so calm, because the children were supposed to be looking after her. Recalling this, the old woman said that little Shiao had taken good care of her all this time, but left a little before her son returned. In this case, the son asked his mother to rest a little, and he himself had to go and worship God, because thanks to God's guidance he had earned a lot of money this time. Hearing this, the mother was not against her son praying to God, but also asked him not to neglect his mercy. It turned out that the statuette standing on the shelf had been picked up by the grandmother when she was planting the scarecrow in the ground, and at first she had not thought that there was anything special about this sculpture. But every time her son worshipped the statue and listened to her instructions, he earned huge sums of money on his travels. Kneeling down, the boy began to thank the statue for its guidance, expressing hope that it would continue to take care of them in the future. Bowing down, the man waited for the statue to tell him what he should do next. His question was never answered, and the boy began to worry, as the sculpture usually answered such questions immediately. Looking up, he immediately realized that something was wrong with this statue today. Stunned, The man even thought that God no longer intended to help him in answer. Continuing to look at the statue, he could not understand what was going on because he was doing all the same actions as before. However, he had some suspicions and thought that the reason might be that he was not sincerely turning to God. Bowing down again, the boy began to pray, seeking the mercy of the Lord. However, after 6 hours, no answer came, and he felt that his worship of God was no longer of any use. After this long time, the old woman entered the room and was surprised to see that her son was still kneeling and ordered him to quickly get up. The difficulties that arose forced the man to slowly rise to his feet, but because his knees were shaking, he couldn't do it and began to slowly sink to the floor. The old woman, worried about what was happening, could not understand what was going on and what was wrong with her beloved son. Looking at the old lady, Shiao Chan assured her that everything was fine and he just needed to go out. Not understanding what was happening, the grandmother wanted to know why her son was running away, because he had just returned home. Sitting down on a chair, she began to think that perhaps he was hiding something from her. Some time later, events continued to develop in the main character's house. The father was talking to his son, discussing the proximity of the shaman's fortress. After telling his father about the whole situation, Shiao Chan thought about the possibility of taking Shiao there to find a way for her to break through. Liu Yunting had indeed thought so before, but after the breakthrough, he no longer cared, and his son sincerely thought about the unfairness of this situation. Even his little sister had gained her power, while he still hadn't been able to achieve it. All of them regained their powers, except for Xiaobing. Suddenly, an alarmed chicken flew into the room and began flying from side to side. Flying over the talking father and son, she headed towards the exit. After breaking the window, the chicken flew out into the street again, and it is unclear why it did this. Overcoming intense irritation, the man stood up and slammed his fist on the table. Turning to his youngest son, he asked him to quickly catch this stinking pigeon, since the window had already been broken many times. This demand caused stress to the boy, as he did not want to hurt anyone, especially when catching a living creature. In a fit of incredible rage, the father shouted to his son to go with him to catch a pigeon, because they were going to make the most delicious soup. Little sister also understood that they would come here because her father knew her too well, and she needed to hide the pigeon away because Shiao Chong will eat it without thinking. Annoyed by the pigeon's behavior, the father shouted that he had already broken too many windows and it was time to send him to the pot to make soup. She said she couldn't give up her pigeon because she grew up with it. Suddenly her father smiled and said that it was no big deal and she wouldn't have to do it. The girl began to worry even more and begged Liu Yunting to stop because her pigeon knew important information for them. Meanwhile, the giant was approaching, turning to his father and explaining that it would be difficult for him to do this, which is why he wanted to catch the pigeon for soup, but his father began to stop him. The big guy hoped that the pigeon soup would smell good, but the hero asked him to find out all the information first before making a decision. Having calmed down a little, Yunting decided to find out from his daughter what important thing the pigeon had told her. It turned out that the pigeon had conveyed information to her that something was wrong with the animals on the western side of their village. Small animals that were once cute and gentle are now behaving aggressively. Recently, some sparrows even started attacking the pigeon, causing it severe stress. As the man watched the dove, he could not believe that the sparrow was so insignificant. These two creatures are absolutely not comparable in size, because a pigeon could easily swallow a sparrow, and this would be quite natural. This was truly amazing, as the pigeon noted that such anomalies in the animal world are becoming more and more common. While Shiao Chan dreamed of trying pigeon soup, suddenly, the elder entered the room, wanting to find out if the owner was present. Ignoring him, the man began to wipe the columns and asked what had happened. The elder warned of strange events on the western side of the mountain and suggested Shiao Chun and Xiaolan join him to review the situation. Realizing that things weren't that simple, the hero realized that the village elder even found out about it, and although no one would work for free, he began to claim that the restaurant was too busy right now. Fortunately, this work was paid for, and the money for it was allocated from the village's conservation fund. Suddenly, the man standing right in front of him disappeared. Once he was behind, he turned to the headman, asking why they were still there, since it was time to move to the other end of the village. The old man and his sons were truly surprised to see such motivation. They did not expect that their father would be so quick to hurry to earn a bag of coins. Sometime later, events continued to develop towards the part of the village where strange events were occurring. They had already been walking together for 3 whole hours, and it was not clear when they would reach their destination. The boy decided to tell the head of the village that at this speed, they would not be able to get there even in 2 days, because he was walking too slowly. If the village head hadn't followed them, they might have already returned back to the restaurant. The worried old man wanted to know if Xiao Lang had managed to find the right place. Unfortunately, no, but she sensed something strange ahead, so they had to walk forward a little to investigate. Suddenly, the dove flew up to the travelers and began to descend to the ground. Very excited, the dove tried with all its might to communicate something to the girl. It turned out that the pigeon warned that 3 miles ahead, there was a mutant rabbit with a very strong attack power. But no one could understand who could benefit from the rabbit becoming stronger, and after all, it is just a rabbit. Watching the rabbit, the travelers noticed that its speed was truly impressive. The creature was so fast that even the girl could not determine exactly where it was. The father began to suspect that it must be one of the mutated animals that the villagers had told him about, and that these creatures were truly terrifying. The elder also approached them and begged them to protect the old man who had become feeble. For the protagonist, this was strange because this old man was extremely strong, but began to weaken when faced with problems, and it was better to forget about it and not pay attention to his antics. Suddenly, the travelers noticed that the rabbit was approaching them at incredible speed. The clever young man decided to use his magical abilities and use the Titan's fist to neutralize the villain. The rabbit didn't even have time to come to senses because he was driven into the ground trying to understand what was happening, who he was, and where he was at all. Watching this rabbit, no one could understand why he was behaving this way. After all, this rabbit looked ordinary, but it was unclear why it was so fast. The girl immediately began to beg the village chief not to come closer, because she felt that this rabbit's weakness was temporary, but the old man said that everything would be fine, because he, as the head of the village, should not retreat in the face of a problem. But as soon as the problem began to develop, the old man hid and decided to leave the matter to the main character and his daughter. In an instant, the rabbit jumped up as if he had never fought before and was ready to attack again. Flew with incredible speed, yin in unexpectedly for him. By using the ability of the unquenchable flame, the boy hoped that he would be able to turn the rabbit that was attacking him from behind. After using this technique, it was known that even an immortal would be crippled if struck by the unquenchable flame. The use of the everlasting flame had an effect, and the rabbit began to burn. He died soon after from his wounds, letting out his dying breaths before ending his life. Within a few seconds, the rabbit had turned into a baked rabbit, which now looked delicious. The main character had a new experience, as he had never dealt with this kind of cooking before. The meat turned out to be very aromatic, and the boy invited the headman to try this rabbit. The taste of the meat was excellent, because it was cooked over an everlasting flame, and the old man could not believe that such meat could be so delicious, although its aroma was captivating. The old man tried to restrain himself and not give in to the temptation to eat this meat. However, after a few minutes, he could not resist and shouted that he would help the young man deal with this piece of meat. When the elderly man tasted it, he was amazed by its excellent taste. As soon as he started eating, he began to cry, realizing that he could not stop. Liu Yunting realized that at his age, the old man should not eat so much meat, and so he asked him to give him back the piece, but the old man refused, thinking that they were trying to deprive him of food. Looking around, the girl heard strange sounds nearby. Pointing in another direction, the daughter said that there was a sheep nearby that was approaching. Presumably, this sheep also had great strength and was ready to fight with ordinary people. The old man hid behind the man again, claiming that it was his responsibility to protect the life of the elderly village chief, and Liu Yunting had no doubt that the old man would run away first. Enraged, the hero declared that he would now turn everyone into grilled lamb. The girl wasn't particularly happy about this, but she understood that her father simply wanted to protect her. The man initially planned to tie the sheep up and then interrogate it, and if the answers did not satisfy him, he intended to grill it. Using fire magic, the boy wanted to check whether the sheep that came here could escape from such a strong blow. Using his strongest attack, Liu Yunting intended to scare the sheep that dared to come here. The blow was so powerful that even after several dozen meters, he was able to catch up with the sheep and hid in the rear. Bodies. The sheep was in great pain and began to fall off the cliff, unable to run. This blow turned out to be truly destructive and immediately neutralized such a serious opponent. After some time, they decided to tie the sheep, and the father asked his daughter to talk to her to find out what was happening to the animals on the mountain. Using her magical abilities, the girl tried to find out from the sheep why she was like that. All this time, her father was rushing her because he really wanted to try the roast lamb. The hero decided to take matters into his own hands and asked to entrust it to him. As he started to light the fire, he said that he wanted some sweet and sour lamb ribs. That is why it was important for him to hear quick answers from the sheep in order to avoid its suffering. But since it was difficult to get answers from the sheep, it was decided to turn it into a wonderful dish. Using a wooden frame, the man suspended the sheep over the fire and began cooking it using his special recipe. Cooked slowly but surely on the barbecue, it was meant to be a real treat and taste exquisite. After a few minutes, the sheep finally began to express its thoughts, but only the girl could understand it. This brought joy to the girl, who exclaimed that the animal had spoken to her. The man looked at his daughter with pleasure, rejoicing, although the sheep remained silent for a long time. It turned out that the sheep said that she knew nothing and could not tell about what was happening to the other animals. The main character was not satisfied with this answer, and he believed that the sheep should tell everything. Otherwise, its fate awaited it to become an even more exquisite dish. He called the dish sheep chops and decided to make them from live sheep. The girl could not calmly watch this and began to close her eyes so as not to see how her father treated the animal. To make the sheep speak, the protagonist used his power again. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yuntin decided to give the sheep one last chance to tell what happened. The sheep tried with all its might to say something, but it was difficult for an ordinary person to understand. Luckily, the girl realized that the sheep remembered that a few days ago she had gone into a cave on the top of the mountain, and after that she became like this. It was strange because the little white rabbit had the same characteristics as the sheep, including red eyes. Once their red eyes dissipate, they die. This answer made Lu Yuntina realize that they needed to go to the top of the mountain to figure this out. After several hours of walking, night fell because the headman walked very slowly. When they saw the cave in front of them, the old man was surprised because he did not know that it was here. The girl also told her father that there was chaos inside the cave and that there were dozens of animals there, similar to those they had seen earlier. This frightened the old man even more, and he asked the protagonist to protect him, since there could be dangerous mutants in the cave. An unknown creature with red eyes began to watch from the cave, causing alarm to the protagonist and his daughter. At this time, the sky became cloudy and the light from the stars became so dim that nothing could be seen at a distance of 3 feet. At this time, the elder had already hidden behind the rocks, relying on Lu Yuntina in this fight. Even the dove, frightened, covered itself with sparrows, realizing that it would not be able to help in this fight. The determined man realized that there might be other dangers lurking in the cave. Bats began to fly out of the cave, frightened by the appearance of people. In order to see something in the cave, the man resorted to his magic, creating a torch from fire. Using fire magic, he illuminated the area to see who lived in this cave. In the bright light, they saw many vicious animals standing on the ledge, ready to attack. The evil beasts growled with rage, their red eyes flashing. They were ready for battle. Realizing that the situation was not in their favor, Lu Yunting protected his daughter, trying to get out of this trap. Concentrating all his strength into his fist, he created a magical fireball and directed it at his opponents. With each passing moment, the opponents were getting closer, preparing to attack anyone who stood in their way. While worrying, the girl realized that these cute little animals were not guilty of anything, and she could not allow them to die in vain. The witty girl decided to intervene, knowing that a conversation could change everything, and she used the darkness cleansing method. The magical light brought relief to the animals, and they gradually calmed down. Their eyes lost the red flash, returning to their normal state. After some time, the father continued to admire his daughter, not believing that she was able to cope with this challenge. All the animals around recovered. Their looks became natural. They behaved calmly. Once all the animals were back to normal, they ran out of the cave, no longer posing a threat. The man looked at his hands and realized that he now had the power of purification too. All this was possible thanks to his daughter, and he was happy that she was so determined. The little girl really showed herself, although the man initially thought about something else, but her actions turned out to be much more valuable. Turning around, the girl realized that food was more important to her father than her feet. Joyful Lu Yuntin invited the old man to join them so they could scout out the area and see what awaited them. Looking around, the old man was convinced that there was no longer any danger. Lu Yunting reassured the old man, saying that it was time to move on, but the old man did not agree, feeling weak. The main character understood that the old man was not so weak, he was just hiding his feelings. Slowly moving deeper into the cave, they sought to find out what was hidden inside. Gradually, they moved forward. Only the elder was worried, not knowing what awaited them next. He even stepped on the hero's foot from the tension. This unexpected gesture slightly startled the man, and he turned around to see what was happening behind him. An elderly man suddenly crashed into the back of the protagonist, not having time to slow down. Feeling uneasy, the old man insisted that Lu Yuntin did not stop and continued moving. The hero suggested that the old man go ahead, but he insisted that the man carry him, explaining his weakness and the pain in his leg. Even though the young man did not see the old man as weak, he still lifted him onto his back and carried him. The place they arrived at resembled an anthill of rocks and stones. The father realized that he needed to ask his daughter to use her abilities to find a way out of the cave. Although the girl had the ability to cleanse creatures of darkness, she did not have the ability to explore the area, but she felt a strange aura in one of the caves. Pointing to this cave, the girl ordered to move in its direction. They immediately went to the cave that seemed the most attractive of all on the way. After half an hour, they finally entered a strange room. The elder immediately noticed that all the things in the room were scattered and destroyed. Without stopping, the hero declared that they needed to look around. Suddenly, something caught the attention of a man nearby. It was a strange stone that he picked up from the floor and asked Shiao Lan if she felt anything unusual from it. Using her magical abilities, the girl tried to determine what kind of aura was emanating from this stone. It turned out that this stone emitted the same aura as those mutant animals outside. The old man suddenly grabbed the stone and said that it was a real find, otherwise he would have added it to his collection. The main character was outraged by this act and declared that this stone exudes true evil. In response, the elder angrily ordered them to throw down the stone so as not to bring trouble upon themselves. The man began to remember that he had seen a similar broken sculpture before, but he could not remember where exactly. It suddenly occurred to him that this was a miniature version of the sculpture from the succubus cave. It seemed like they should have visited the succubus cave to see if it was related to this. Turning his attention to the old man, Lu Yuntin saw him lifting a huge mountain. It turns out he sensed that the mountain was in danger and decided to help it. They decided to leave this place since there was nothing valuable there anymore. The animals may have mutated because of the sculpture, and now that it is destroyed, such problems should not arise in the future. This was great news, and the old man threw the rock before climbing onto Lu's back. Juntanu. Meanwhile, events continued to take place in the village. One of the sons was washing the table and was thinking about the fact that his father had not appeared for several days, and he began to worry about his condition. It turned out that the main character had been waiting for an answer from the stone all this time. 3 days had already passed, but there was still no answer. The exhausted man wanted the stone to somehow react, because of it he had not eaten or drunk for 3 days, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He begged the stone head to show some reaction and thought that perhaps it needed to be rubbed first. Taking a magnifying glass, he began to carefully examine the stone, illuminating it with light. If the stone does not show any reaction, Lu Yuntin decided to draw a mustache on him. However, the stone remained motionless, which greatly disappointed the father, and he did not even move, as if he were dead. The main character could not understand how to explain to his neighbors that this stone head could be the reason for the attack of bloodthirsty animals on their homes. If the stone hadn't resembled the statue from the succubus's cave, he probably wouldn't have paid attention to it and brought it home. Suddenly, his son called out to his father from behind because he had something to tell. The father was ready to listen to his son, but first asked him to bring his sister Xiaobing. Not understanding what was happening, the boy fulfilled his father's request because he respected him. A few seconds later, the sister was already here. The girl did not understand why she was called. With a heavy sigh, the man asked Xiaobing to take a walk with him. The girl did not understand where they were going, and the sad father said that they were heading to the cave of the succubi. At this time, the boy watched his sister and saw that she, as always, behaved like a good girl in front of her father. Suddenly, the boy remembered what he wanted to tell his father. He began to talk about his concerns. But the father looked away and did not listen to him, since it was getting dark and they needed to hurry, and if it was not too important, they could talk later when they returned. This turn of events greatly upset the boy, and he was surprised that his father began to leave while he was speaking. The boy understood that it was difficult to get through to his father when he was busy with something, but he hoped that his father would return and they could talk. At this moment, the father finally decided to return because he remembered something. The exhausted man announced that he would be gone for a while and asked his son to take care of the restaurant. When the boy tried to talk to his father again, he saw that he immediately left the restaurant. Understanding his father's character, the boy was not even surprised that he was not allowed to go all the way. A few minutes later, the events unfolded in the forest, where the father explained to his daughter that they were heading to the succubus cave not only to solve the mystery of the sculpture. They also intended to improve her skills, since the cave was home to the elders of their race, from whom one could learn and gain a lot. The girl happily agreed, for she was eager to develop her powers. After a few hours of traveling, the heroes remembered that the last time he saved Xiao Shina, he destroyed all the obstacles he encountered. Having encountered difficulties on the way, he wondered if the sculpture was still in the cave. However, when they approached the cave, the man was surprised. The cave looked completely different, full of colors and bright. Lu Yunting was genuinely happy to see that the cave had been renovated and decorated in such a short time. Suddenly, one of the succubi came out, wondering who the travelers were looking for. The hero was surprised by the girl's face, wondering if there were any unpleasant individuals among the succubi. The man asked to call the owner of the cave to discuss some issues, but the succubus was against it, claiming that their master had just arrived and no one could see him. Assuming the girl was a newcomer, the guy tried to be polite and asked for permission again. However, the girl refused to listen to him, saying that he was deaf, and insisted that he should leave, as this was not a place for arbitrary visits. Having decided to use force, the hero asked not to be forced to beg anymore. The succubus immediately realized that this man had strength and determination. Taking out a whip, the girl warned that she would respond to the attack in the same way if he attacked. Liu Yuntin hit her hard, wanting to punish the girl for her insults. Suddenly, someone nearby addressed the hero, calling him a great god. It turned out to be another succubus, who apologized to the great god, explaining that the new girl had misunderstood the situation and begged for forgiveness if she had offended him. Since it was just a misunderstanding, he decided to ignore it and continued on his way to the cave. The new girl wanted to know from her colleague why she let them in again. The colleague reacted harshly to the question, threatening her with death for her carelessness, claiming that they would have been smashed to pieces if she had not appeared, since their previous master had been killed by this terrible man. Realizing her mistake, the succubus immediately apologized, not realizing that an ordinary person could be so strong. Upon entering the cave, they smelled a pleasant aroma and were amazed by the luxurious surroundings. They didn't expect the cave to become so beautiful after the hero's destruction, but the new master apparently had good taste. One of the succubi invited the guests inside, and the boy wanted to know why they had become so polite, and the daughter explained that it was because of the hero's previous attack on them. Winking at Liu Yuntin, the succubus informed them that their master was waiting for them inside behind the screen and suggested that they go inside. The girl, afraid of a possible fight, ran away with all her might. Suddenly, the man felt a pleasant, refreshing smell nearby. Worried, the daughter warned her father not to enter the room because of the strange smell that she also smelled. The father reassured his daughter by saying that he had great strength and IQ and was worried about who else might have gotten hurt. They decided to follow the smell to find out its source. The hero noticed that something was wrong with the new master's head, because that's why he invited guests to the bathhouse. A girl appeared and greeted the man who had defeated the previous ruler. It was unexpected for the hero to meet the new master in such a situation. Looking at the girl, he couldn't believe that she had become their new leader. Their eyes met and a spark arose between them, as if they had fallen in love with each other. The master began to win the protagonist's trust, and a strange smell emanated from her. The man stopped her, wanting to know if she was really going to seduce him in front of his child. He was very sensitive about raising children, and not every woman could be their mother. At this time, a column of water appeared, and he declared that he was not afraid of temptations, since any woman could try to be the mother of his children. The succubus smirked, thinking that an ordinary person could not resist her charms, and he would die without even knowing why. The daughter felt she didn't know what to say because her father was no longer going to reunite with their real mother. The succubus told the hero that becoming the mother of his children is indeed not easy. She suggested that he take a swim in the pool, and only then would she think about it. The daughter realized that the woman did not want to be her mother. She warned her father again that it was a trap, and he should not fall for it. The father seemed not to hear her and did not react to any of her statements, because he was enchanted. It was all really bad because the father was fascinated and the girl felt that this pool was very strange. She didn't know what was wrong with it, but the father shouldn't touch the water. Trying to hold the man back, the girl began to scream that they shouldn't do this because they didn't need another mother. Before Liu Yunting had an illusion that Lin Huan had returned to be the mother of his children, and he tried to get closer to her to embrace her. The succubus continued to watch everything that was happening and ordered the enchanted man to come closer. She literally had complete control over every action of the guy, as if he was under hypnosis and unconditionally obeyed any of her commands. After this, the succubus told the guy to completely immerse himself in the water and not hesitate, doing it as quickly as possible. Looking at her father, the daughter could not stand it and realized that she had to do something because she could not allow her father to enter the pool. Using her weapon, the girl tried to bring her father back to consciousness, taking out her whip. For the succubus, this sight was truly amusing because it was funny to realize that an ordinary pool of their succubus clan was able to easily subdue the one who killed the previous leader. Suddenly, the head saw something she had never expected and could not understand how it was even possible. At that very second, the man shouted that the water here was too cold for swimming. The main succubus couldn't believe her eyes because she couldn't understand how he was able to free himself from the spell. Luckily, the pool's power no longer affected him, and he regained his sanity, ready to fight. There was very strange water in this pool, and as soon as he touched it, he felt a tyrannical corrosive force that could directly attack the soul of the person touching it. It was a pity that the water was so cold, otherwise he would have really enjoyed swimming. However, he still decided to invite his beloved to go with him, perhaps to become the mother of his children. The main succubus didn't like this and immediately began to attack, starting with an attack on the girl. Not understanding what was happening, the girl looked around in shock and did not know how to resist such powerful attacks. She suddenly remembered what her father had said, that when they found themselves among the succubi, it was important to watch them closely and learn. At that moment, the girl understood what to do in this situation. It turns out that her father wanted her to master the skills that the head of the succubi possesses. Seeing the girl dodge, the leader couldn't understand how she had mastered her whip technique so quickly. The work was truly remarkable, as the daughter not only managed to dodge a serious attack, but also counterattack. By striking with a whip, she managed to block the leader's initial attack, and thus avoid serious consequences from such a blow. And the whips literally clashed together, ending up in a knot. At this rate, the head of the succubi knew that she could lose now. Lose turn. Juntina continued the fight. Hearing this, the girl was very grateful to her father for his full support. The good-natured man was proud of his daughter for her decisive attack that almost resulted in victory over the leader of the succubi. As a sign of praise, he even stroked her head. It was a truly wonderful confession. The succubus also noted that at such a young age, his daughter was learning all the lessons very quickly. Thus, in the blink of an eye, she mastered the most powerful striking technique. Turning to his opponent, the man wanted to understand how one could talk about kinship if she herself had demonstrated everything. Still, the main succubus wanted to know the purpose of their visit, because she doubted that they came just to watch her bathe. The smart guy said that if she hadn't reminded him, he would have already forgotten why he was actually here. The hero decided to tell a little about himself, claiming that he was an outstanding person and, of course, deserved a reward for watching her bathe. Even for a daughter, it was a truly amazing turn of events, and the offer to pay to watch was something only a dad could come up with. These words made the head of the succubi very angry, and she wanted to know if he was serious about the reward. Taking her whip, she declared that she could indeed give him a reward, but not what he expected. The power of her blow was impressive, and she wanted to show that she should not be underestimated. After thinking for a bit, the guy still asked her to stop and not attack again. If she doesn't want it, then it's not necessary, because it's not known why she acts so cruelly, especially when there's a child nearby, and the violence should stop. This statement angered the head of the succubi even more, and she ordered him to stop talking nonsense, since his daughter had just shown how aggressive one could be. The succubus also realized that seeing her relaxed state, she thought that the girl was not using her full power, and this talent of the little girl was a little scary. The leader really didn't want to fight the guy, but his tyrannical power was greater than hers, and she had no advantage. Furthermore, his strength should not be underestimated, especially considering that he was able to handle their pool, and it was unfortunate that his daughter stole her whip technique so easily. After thinking about it, the leader came to the conclusion that they should discuss their affairs. The hero began to talk about a sculpture that stood in their cave, but now it is not there. The current head wanted to know what sculpture was being discussed. From his attire, he pulled out the head of the scarlet demon, deciding to show what kind of sculpture he was talking about. Looking at the demon's head, the succubus was truly shocked. She didn't expect to see it here. This head was indeed similar to the other sculptures in this cave. However, the man was interested in where this sculpture was located. Succubus, despite the difficulty of realizing this fact, admitted that all their sculptures were broken. So, if all the sculptures are really destroyed, he won't be able to learn more here. When recalling past events, Lu Yuntin thought that when he last met the succubi in the cave, some of them had already been destroyed by him, but it was unclear who had destroyed the rest. Nevertheless, the hero decided to find out when and how the destruction of the remaining sculptures occurred. With a heavy sigh, the succubus admitted that even before the capture of the Red Devil's Cave, all of the demon sculptures had been broken. However, the exact circumstances of this destruction of the succubus are still being investigated, since it is unknown how it happened. After listening to the whole story, the man could not believe these words because everything was really strange. In that case, he requested that the chief show him all the fragments of the sculptures that remained. It turned out that all the fragments of the sculptures had been thrown away, which greatly confused the hero. He had only one clue left, the artifact that he had in his hands. Inside the sculpture was hidden a spirit that could influence the consciousness of those around it. This fact amazed the chief succubus, and she could not believe that it was really so. But since she didn't know anything, they had nothing more to do here, and they immediately began to leave. However, the head decided to help them by throwing them an artifact, the token of her succubus clan, through which people with succubus blood could send messages. This wooden sign should have been in Xiao Bing's possession, and perhaps it would be useful to them in the future. The succubi thanked the people for their humble visit and asked them to return home, after which the protagonist set off on his journey with his daughter. A few hours later, they finally returned home and headed straight to the restaurant. The father, delighted, asked his son how things were going at the restaurant. Everything was going well, but they were inundated with requests, and Lu Yuntin immediately inquired about what kind of requests were coming from the visitors. Their restaurant was located on the eastern edge of the village, next to the rice fields where many people worked and lived on the outskirts. Although many of them would have liked to come in for a meal, the distance was too great, so they relied on a door-to-door delivery service, for which they were of course willing to pay. This idea seemed great, and my father approved of it, and in this way, queues could be avoided, and as for who to send, Shiao Chong would be a great candidate. Instantly, the man ran to the headman to discuss this with him. After all, to start a food delivery service, you need to get the consent of the village headman. Shocked, the man approached the village chief, explaining that their restaurant had started a new business and he hoped for his support in promoting this service in the village. However, as soon as he told about this, the headman immediately closed the door in front of him. This made Liu angry, Yantina, and he begged the headman to listen to him, but he spoke of his fears of trouble and fatigue and asked him to forget about it. After some thought, the man mentioned widow Li of Baekuan, claiming that she had told him about the village chief's visit to her. A second later, the headman opened the door and announced that Liu's restaurant Yantina is a prestigious project for their village, and he is obliged to support it. Since launching takeaway food delivery, they have never missed a meal. Every day, precisely at lunchtime, they take orders from their father and deliver them throughout the village. Despite being busy and tired, the father is happy because it is his dream to work with children in the restaurant business. People admire the convenient service the restaurant offers, especially the carrier pigeon ordering system. As soon as the service became available, many people became interested and started placing orders to try out the new product. That same day, many residents ordered food to try out the new service. One of the sons didn't notice how time flew by. He was so carried away by the delivery that it was already dark. However, it was good that there was only one package left to deliver to Aunt Zhang's family. Then it was necessary to quickly deliver the food and immediately return home. Looking around, the boy noticed that a bright red light was flashing nearby. Peering through the grass, he spotted an object that looked like a child's toy. It ended up being a statue, but it looked very strange and was the first time the guy had seen it. Shiao Chong couldn't understand why she was emitting such a strange and blinding red light, but he liked it very much. He even started poking the figurine to see how it would react. In any case, it was necessary to continue the delivery, since it was not yet completed. Having seen this toy, the guy still decided to take it with him, thinking that it would be a good idea. Taking the bag of food, he understood that if he was late, he would be scolded again, so he needed to hurry. Because God only knows how many customers have scolded him lately for being late. A few hours later, Shiao Chan finally arrived at the customer's house to deliver the food. The satisfied guy first wanted to rest a little, and then finally deliver the food that had been ordered a long time ago. Looking into the windows of the house, he decided it was time to go and deliver food. Knock politely on the door to alert customers that they have arrived with food. The irritated woman opened the door with her child to receive the food she had ordered earlier. The friendly guy exclaimed that their delivery had arrived, but the annoyed woman couldn't understand why it was taking so long. Trying to find an excuse, Shiao Chen began to say that this order was placed very late, which was the reason for the delay. This order was a bit of a surprise to them, which is why it arrived late. Not wanting to hear it anymore, the irritated woman closed the door right in front of the friendly Shiao Chun. On his way home, the boy thought about how tiring it is to be scolded all day long. Thinking back to the last delivery, he wondered why that woman had yelled at him so loudly because the order was taking so long to arrive. This irritated him greatly because he always tried to be kind to people, but in response they shouted at him and insulted him. He started shouting with all his might, demanding that they stop insulting him because it seemed to him that people were still shouting at him, calling him slow. The guy even hit the ground out of rage, not knowing how to express his indignation. Moving closer to the window, he began to observe the house of the client to whom he had just delivered an order. A small child could be seen through the window playing with toys. The guy had a strange feeling, as if someone had started to control his thoughts, forcing him to go inside the house and kill everyone. And after he kills everyone, he will feel better. A nagging voice in his head was forcing him to do it, and he was already reaching for the door handle to open it. Opening the door, the huge guy slowly prepared to enter inside, remaining unnoticed. The child continued to play, happy that he had made a house. The voice in my head began to insist again that I needed to kill the child in order to become stronger and better. The frightened child saw the giant approaching him and did not understand what Brother Xiao wanted from him. Chun. The boy thought his brother wanted to play building blocks with him. Actually, Shiao Chan was under the control of an unknown entity that commanded him to act through an obsessive voice in his head. Coming closer to the boy, he continued to look at him, wondering what to do next. The good-natured boy tried to explain to his brother how to build a house from building blocks and wanted to do it with him. He even intended to help the child because he was really kind to Xiao Chenu. The nagging voice in his head continued to control Shiao Chun, and he grabbed the child without hesitation, preparing to do something terrible. Luckily, after a few seconds the guy came to his senses and began to observe what he was doing with his child. After letting go of the child, Shiao Chun couldn't understand how this happened or what he was doing. The frightened guy couldn't even imagine how he could do such a thing because he broke into the house and grabbed someone else's child. Shiao Chun knew that he couldn't let Aunt Zhang know that he was here, otherwise they would have to leave the village. The boy ran with all his might to remain unnoticed. Experiencing great difficulties and fatigue, he continued to run without stopping for a moment. After running a few hundred meters, he realized that fortunately he was awakened by Zhao's scream, Nanya. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known what happened to him. However, the huge guy didn't understand why he suddenly became like this. Looking at the statue, he thought that perhaps it was because of her that she was controlling his mind. Throwing away the statuette, he shouted that he never wanted to see it again and ordered her to stay away from him. After some time, Shiao Chan returned home, and his brother immediately felt that something was wrong with him, as if he had been judged. Concerned about his brother's behavior, the young man tried to figure out what had happened to his brother and why he was behaving this way. The worried brother said everything was fine and headed into the house. Without understanding what was happening, the brother knew that Shiao Chong was always cheerful and kind, but today he was in a very bad mood. Seeing his brother in his sad state, the young man tried to calm him down, reminding him that there was food left in the kitchen and he had worked all day and needed to eat. Shiao Chun didn't want to eat and said he wasn't hungry at all. All this time, the guy was trying to understand what was wrong with him and why he behaved the way he did in that situation. Meanwhile, his brother realized that Shiao Chun has some problems, but dad is not home now, and it is better not to interfere for now. Maybe everything will get better soon. In Zhao's head, Chun was filled with strange thoughts and couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. According to the boy, his father always took Shiao seriously. To Bayo, not to him, always went to save others, but did not come to the rescue when he was in danger. It is also unclear why Shiao Yi is forgiven for any mistakes, but not him, despite the fact that they are all people. The guy also wanted to understand why everyone has a chance to become stronger, but he doesn't, because he looks strange only because he is different from ordinary people. This instantly caused anger in the young man, and he began to scream in anger. The voice in his head was telling him to kill Shiao again. Debeo, to attract the attention of the father. Feeling intense rage, the boy literally began to smash the wooden table with his own hand, and the voice in his head continued to convince him of the need to kill his brother in order to become stronger. Then the boy stood up and began to slowly approach his brother. Suddenly someone turned to Shiao Chun, calling him Big Brother. It turned out to be a little girl who noticed that her brother was acting strangely. While she was busy eating her favorite sweet potato treat, she wanted to know why Shiao Chun is still not resting. Under the demon's control, he didn't know what to answer and just continued to look at his sister. Having come to his senses, the guy began to get nervous and thought that he really needed to rest. He immediately ran to his room to finally rest and be alone with himself. Very strange thoughts were going through his head, and he was thinking that he had just almost killed his older brother. Throwing his box on the floor, its contents scattered across the floor. In despair, he began to mutter to himself, considering himself crazy for even thinking about killing his brother. The guy sincerely considered himself useless and helpless, unable to do anything except eat. Looking at his box, he noticed that it again contained the same statuette that he had thrown away earlier. The scarlet demon statue seemed to enchant him, and he lost his mind, consumed by obsession. These events continued for several days in the main character's house. The son decided to tell his father that a few days ago Uncle Chun came to see him, acting very strangely and looking very strange, and he thought his father should visit him. The surprised man immediately wanted to know what Chun looked like. The boy said that he had bloody eyes and that he really looked very strange. A few hours later, night fell in the village and it became dark. Breathing heavily, the protagonist headed to his friend's house to find out what had happened to him. Chen's house, which was found right at night. As soon as the main character approached it, the flower began to wither. It was a strange phenomenon, and the man realized that something was wrong, and perhaps something had taken the life force of this flower, otherwise it would not have withered like that. Looking around, he remembered that everything had been fine here a few days ago when he picked up Shiao Yi. Only a few days have passed, but everything has become neglected, which gives rise to scary thoughts. Perhaps something happened in the last few days when the man was not near this house. It seemed that Shun Shan would be in danger if he didn't come to thank Shiao Yi for looking after the old lady. Despite this, the hero decided to knock on the door to find out what happened. But no one opened the door, and it seemed to him that there was no one in the house. Opening the door a little, he realized that it was open, which was very strange. Having barely opened the door, the hero began to examine the house to understand what had happened. Once inside, Lu Yunting kept thinking about what his son had told him about Chen's bloodshot eyes, and perhaps he was possessed. The house looked strange considering that Shiao Yi had only been here a few days ago, but there was already a lot of dust. After the inspection, the hero decided to return in the morning and inspect the house again. Nearby, he found stones lying on the floor. These stones were similar to those that were on the prayer altar. Inspecting the fragments, Lu Yunting couldn't understand how they ended up at Brother Chen's house. Suddenly, it became clear to him that a fragment of one of the stones looked very much like the face of a statue of the devil. It was strange, and he didn't know how the devil statue ended up in the house. Realizing that this was not just a coincidence, Lu Yunting began to wonder what was going on here. The mutated animals on the hill behind the village also had scarlet eyes and attacked people. He felt very uneasy, thinking that Chin's brother might have gone crazy along with his mother. It was necessary to find out as quickly as possible in order to save them. Having thrown away the shard, the hero went to look for Chun and his mother. At the same time, events continued to unfold in the Shiao family home. Under severe stress, Shiao Chan began to beg the voices in his head to shut up and stop bothering him. But the nagging voices continued to insist that he must kill his brother to become stronger. The stunned guy felt like the devil was pulling him along, forcing him to commit terrible crimes. The demonic creature insisted that only killing his brother would make him stronger, and that there was no point in expecting help from him because he was nothing. Resisting, Shiao Chun screamed for the demon to leave his head, refusing to kill his family. Feeling intense pain, he continued to scream that he would never harm his family. The demon couldn't force him to hurt his loved ones. Since the demon could not be driven out of his head, he decided to destroy it. Grabbing the box containing the demon figurine, he began to act to destroy it. While eating sweet potatoes, his little sister wanted to know where he was going so late. Turning to his sister, the worried brother said that he would be back soon. He needed to go away on business. Immediately after this, he left the house, intending to destroy the statue as quickly as possible so that it would not harm anyone. The family thought that it was probably Shiao Chun forgot to bring food to someone, and everyone realized that it was possible. Night came and Chin thought about how he needed to smash this damn statue into pieces as soon as possible. He slammed the statue hard against the stone, trying to break it, but was initially unsuccessful. Looking around, he searched for a suitable place to destroy the demonic statue. Luckily, there was a stone nearby that could be used to destroy the statue. Having lifted a huge stone, the young man began to act and wanted to know how it would affect his thoughts after that. Sometime later, events took place again in the family home, and Shiao Chun couldn't sleep. He was tormented by nightmares and did not understand what was happening to him and why he could not sleep peacefully. With each passing second, his condition worsened, as if there was an emptiness in his heart and he felt uncomfortable. The sculpture was destroyed, and now he was supposed to spend the night in his usual sleep rhythm, but something prevented him from falling asleep. Deciding to give it another chance, the guy threw off the blanket because it was very stuffy in the room. Not far from him lay the very same statue that he had destroyed earlier. Shiao Chun jumped out of bed, not understanding how this happened, because he destroyed the statue, and now it was back in his bed. The statue's eyes began to glow bright red, as if it had come to life. The frightened youth turned to the statue again, asking why it was there again and what it was doing there. Not understanding how this was possible, he wanted to know what he needed to do to get rid of this statue. The voices in his head kept insisting that in order to free himself, he had to kill Shiao Yi first. And after that, kill your own brother. Only then will he find peace. Only in this case, Shiao Chun will be able to survive. Ignoring the temptation, the boy continued to shout that he would never do this or harm his family. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and asked if Shiao was okay. Chun. It turned out that it was his father, and the young man was sincerely glad that his father always took care of him. Looking at the statue, the guy did not know what to do with it because it was trying to control him, and he could not cope with it. Before opening the door to his father, the boy reassured him, saying that everything was fine and he didn't want to tell his father anything, afraid that he would worry too much. After wishing his son good night, Lu Yuntin left the room, urging him to rest. While struggling with the statue, Shiao Chen insisted that he did not need the devil's help, as he himself was capable of becoming stronger. The devil claimed that the family owed him, and even if the boy turned away, he would be able to find them and use his power, and this made Shiao furious. Chun, who cried out that the devil had no right to harm his family. And then the devil exclaimed that only after his demands were met would he leave. The requirement was to take the doll and hang it on the tallest tree in the east of the village near the rice fields. After looking at the doll, the boy agreed to fulfill the demand, but only on the condition that the devil would leave their family forever. This proposal did not cause any problems for the devil, and he conveyed his conditions through the doll. Xiao even more confused. Chun, and he couldn't understand how this was possible and why the doll started talking to him. Suddenly the doll laughed and warned to handle it carefully, because the devil would not leave if the doll was damaged. The boy was shaking with fear. He had not yet managed to get used to the otherworldly phenomena in the room. The strange doll began to glow bright red and exerted its influence on Xiao again. Chinna. Realizing that this could not continue, Chin became too impulsive and, lowering the barriers of his mind, simply let go of all his defense mechanisms. Bowing down before the doll, the boy began to beg her not to bother him anymore and to let him go. The devil continued to advance on the boy and pull his arms, trying to take over his body and control him. The young man's silhouette was illuminated by a bright red light, and he felt changes in his body. The guy's mind became clouded when the hellish creature ordered him to open the door and go only forward. After listening to the devil's order, Shiao Chong went to the indicated place. With each passing minute, he moved further and further away until he reached the rice fields on the edge of the village. When he reached the field, he had to hang the doll on the tallest tree nearby. The tree was very tall, and its branches were even higher. But the guy was not embarrassed by this, and he did his best to hang the doll on the top of the tree. Thus, the magic doll ended up at the top of the tree, and the devil exclaimed that the boy had finally completed the task. Breathing heavily, Shiao Chun turned to the devil, saying that he had fulfilled his conditions, and now the villain must free his family. The guy's family always came first for him, and he insisted that no one should harm them, and the devil replied that he had no intention of touching his family as long as they did not interfere. Feeling powerless, the boy gradually lost consciousness. After a few seconds, he fell to the floor and could no longer move. The doll's hands began to acquire fingers and could move. It seemed that the doll had gained consciousness and could do whatever it wanted. The doll had a demonic laugh. She was furious and ready to destroy everything around her. The events continued the next day in the main character's house. The boy spent the last few days thinking about the doll, and he couldn't sleep normally. Suddenly, the man noticed something very strange and paid attention to it. It was his son who returned home, very tired and exhausted. The worried father couldn't understand what had happened to Shiao Chun because he looked very bad. The frightened boy began to tell that he did not remember how he got to the rice field. Perhaps he was a sleepwalker and went there in a dream. The hero was shocked to hear that his son was sleeping in the rice fields that were located to the east of their restaurant, and he could not believe it. Lu Yunting called his second son, preparing to take a walk to the east side of the village. Hurry! Shiao Chun and his father rushed to the rice field to find out what had happened. The son could not understand why his father brought him here. Father, looking around, tried to look serious. Although his father did not answer the question, Shiao Shan realized that the situation was serious. His father was clearly in a bad mood. After half an hour of searching, the boy still didn't understand what his father was doing, and there was nothing strange in the rice field, but his uneasy feeling grew stronger. The protagonist's heart began to beat faster as they approached the tree. Looking up, the heroes discovered the tree on which the doll had previously hung. But as they approached, they did not notice anything unusual on the tree, and although the tree emitted a strange smell, and the closer they got to it, the more anxiety gripped Xiao Shina. The worried man asked his son to stay put while he went to investigate, but Xiao Shan didn't see any particular difference between this tree and the others. Coming even closer to the tree, Lu Yuntin began to examine him, trying to figure out what was wrong. Suddenly, like lightning from a clear sky, an attack fell upon them, as if someone had thrown a sword. And it really happened, and a huge blade pierced the ground. Although it was initially aimed straight at the protagonist and his son, they were able to dodge it. The blade was thrown by a mysterious stranger who seemed to appear out of nowhere. The stranger dropped to the ground and pulled his blade out of the soil. The worried father still wanted to understand why the stranger attacked them and asked about it. The man felt like the stranger was trying to kill him and Xiao Shina at the first opportunity. Watching the stranger, Xiao Shan was amazed by his high speed and agility. In any case, if this villain wanted to kill the protagonist, he still couldn't do it, and the person capable of such a thing hasn't even been born yet. Armed with a Titan shark, Lu Yuntin decided to take all possible measures to confront the attacker and not give him a chance to harm him or his son. With a powerful blow, the protagonist managed to destroy the stranger's sword, depriving him of his weapon. This unexpected turn of events shocked the man. He did not expect that an ordinary person could destroy his sword. Under the crushing blow of the protagonist, the villain flew back a considerable distance, losing his strength. Watching the fight, the son realized that his father had become much stronger. Coming closer, Lu Yuntin was interested in trying to identify the attacker. He wanted to find out who the stranger was, where he was from, and why he wanted to kill them. Turning to his son, the father asked him to inform the village elder about what had happened. As the investigation continued, the hero insisted on finding out the identity of the attacker. After all, this stranger had demonstrated enough courage and persistence in his attempts to kill Lu Yuntin and his son. It was noticeable that the stranger's eyes were glowing bright red, which could indicate that he was possessed. Looking at the villain, the guy insisted on finding out the reasons for his aggression, ordering him to tell as quickly as possible so as not to lose patience. It turned out that the attack occurred because they were simply in the path of a stranger. For the protagonist, this was a ridiculous reason for murder. The stranger believed that people like the hero deserved to die for hindering him, being insignificant outcasts. Unable to bear such humiliation, Lu Yuntin attacked the stranger with force, believing himself to be a god. However, the stranger claimed that he was not a god, but that a god would soon appear, and all the nonentities like him would perish. This was a surprising discovery for the man, and he wondered if God would really come. Suddenly, Lu Yuntin noticed that his opponent had stopped moving. Coming closer, he saw that the stranger was not breathing, and deciding to protect his son from the horrific sight, Liu Yunting sent him away, and despite everything, although Shiao Chong became more aware, his father would have thought it too cruel to let him watch a man die. After 15 minutes, Liu Yunting thought that the village chief and the others should have arrived long ago, and so much time had passed that he decided to return to the village to see what was going on. While fleeing the scene, the man began to worry about possible trouble. Suddenly, the stranger began to smile, although he had previously been dead. Seeing this, Liu immediately paid attention to it. Having decided to return, the protagonist carefully examined the stranger's body. To his relief, he found a bag of gold in one of his pockets, realizing that he had not returned in vain. As for the enemy himself, Liu planned to destroy him using fire. Suddenly, the stranger shouted that their people had already entered the village and that they had already found the one they were looking for, and he warned that if they left, all the villagers would die. Meanwhile, events were unfolding in the house of the village elder. Someone was knocking on the door. The tired old man headed towards the door, wondering if Liu Yunting came to him again. However, when the old man opened the door, he discovered that the person in front of him was not at all the person he expected to see. The older man slammed the door shut, scared that this guy had found him here, and he didn't understand how. The mysterious stranger approached the elder and said that they had not seen each other for many years, and now he was greeting him like this, and the stranger wanted the elder to show him what kind of wonderland he had been in for several decades. The experienced man shouted in fear that they had the wrong address and had to leave. In fact, the meeting did not take place where expected, even though the elder had been away from us for many years. The stranger would not have been able to confuse his scent with any other. With his eyes closed, the old man thought about what was about to happen and realized that it would happen anyway. Having opened the door, he nevertheless decided to let into the house the mysterious traveler who came to him. The strange man was dressed in strange clothes that the locals did not wear, and he was once the second in command in the Tartarus organization before he left. The elder hadn't seen him for decades and thought the organization had forgotten about him, but he was still here. The old man poured tea with kindness and expressed his pleasure at his visit, and he thought it was very kind of him to come visit, especially in such solitude, which is why he decided to treat him to tea. As he looked around, the stranger wondered if it had been worth his while to spend the decade since he had left the organization. With his head bowed, the old man admitted that his friend might not understand his decision, but the stranger had no intention of understanding him. The old man gave up the opportunity to communicate with the evil kingdom to live in this wilderness and become a loser, which the stranger didn't really like. If they can gain the favor of the higher powers in the evil realm, they will be able to ascend without having to train hard. They will be able to leave this world when the door to ascension opens in the Tianlan sanctuary, and they will not need to train hard. The old man loved the leisurely life and doing what he liked, but he found it funny that his old friend was living a delusional fantasy. According to the old comrade, leisure in this world is a real illusion, which caused him doubts. If things were so bad in the heavenly kingdom, then why those who had gone there and done so much for it decided not to return remained unclear. Hearing this, the old man reminded that they were just ancestors to the higher realm, which was an important understanding for him. Those of them who refuse to ascend to the heavenly kingdom are trying their best to preserve this world. The stranger did not like this answer, as he did not pay attention to it and did not care, as he just wanted to ascend, no matter whether anyone remained alive or not. To the old man, these scoundrels were just a bunch of masked shadows who actually thought they could ascend to the evil realm. Thule knew that he was tired of living a monotonous life for decades, and although he prayed and performed rituals, he was devout, but God only gave him one instruction, and if he completed this task, there would be no problem, but if he did not fulfill God's will properly, he would be doomed. For many years, he asked himself if he had done enough, and if he was happy, but over time he began to enjoy living in the illusion of self-deception. The old man explained that there were restrictions in this place, so there's no hope that someone like him would be able to use his power here. The enraged youth exclaimed that the old man had probably become stupid over the years, and if he could find the elder, it meant he had powers. That was why the stranger who came had no more limitations on his power. The old man, feeling furious, thought that the maniac had been destroyed, but he did not understand why the precise danger had appeared again and when it happened. Worried, the man still wanted to understand why his old friend had come here. It turned out that his lord had called him to take the elder, and he needed to go with him. The man started shaking his head because he wasn't going to leave, and the people here were all he had in his life, and he wasn't going to leave them because he liked it here. The scoundrel did not want to believe the man who had previously killed the same people without blinking an eye, but the old man kept repeating so that the scoundrel would remember that he loved his residents and would continue to take care of them. For the impudent man, this was no obstacle, and if he did not go with him, he was going to kill all his so-called villagers and wanted to see how he could protect them on his own. All the young and old inhabitants of the village could have died because the headman did not dare to go with his old comrades. Meanwhile, having returned to the village, the main character did not understand why there was such a huge crowd near him. As he got closer to the restaurant, he began to wonder why his children had closed the restaurant. Trying to make his way through the crowd, he begged people to let him through because it was his restaurant and he wanted to figure out what was going on. But it was no use, and Lu Yuntin decided to wait until everyone had left before quietly entering. Suddenly, a powerful explosion was heard nearby, which struck with its strength and power. Having marked the place of the explosion, the hero instantly realized that the headman's house was located there. With full persistence, Lu Yunting ran to the village chief to investigate the situation and immediately saw people running away from the destroyed place. These people emitted a strong, bloody energy, and the guy realized that they were clearly murderers. The criminals also noticed him and were preparing to attack, as they wanted to eliminate the one who stood in their way. Realizing that he needed to use his full power, the protagonist decided to summon Asura. A divine being has been summoned and is ready to fight on humanity's side, helping Lu Juntanu. While continuing to fight, the hero also used the power of the Titan to incapacitate each of his opponents. The next moves were the inexhaustible flame and the eye of justice to finally defeat everyone. These magical abilities really scared the enemies, as they couldn't believe that an ordinary person was capable of such a thing. The most powerful attacks continued to fall on the enemy one after another, as each of the villains had to be punished. Meanwhile, the boy realized that his opponents were too weak to try to kill him. Within a few minutes, 2 enemies were successfully destroyed. After all, by attacking the main character, they dug a hole for themselves. A search through the personal belongings of one of the villains drew the guy's attention to one unusual object. Picking up the unknown artifact, he decided to give it to Shiao to play with. Hearing the explosion, Lu Yuntin immediately turned towards the village and realized that the villagers were in danger.